You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. I'm your host, Samson Ladi Anyanini. And my guest, Abdul Malik Kwekubaku, is editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. His documents have been here. He's been here and just walked out briefly. Should be back. I'm wondering if he's got documents on sex for grades. Inusa Hussein is MP, Tamale Central, and ranking member, Legal, Constitutional and Parliamentary Affairs of the Parliament of Ghana. Martin Pebu is a lawyer and a rights advocate. And Joseph Dinjok Penka is MP, Timpane, and Deputy Attorney General and Minister for Justice. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Yeah,
morning. Right. Okay, so we start with the very provoking story that is dominated the headlines and our minds all week. The BBC did a documentary titled Sex for Grades and spoke about how widespread that was a situation in West Africa's universities. Let's listen to this very briefly and then hear a response from one of those affected in Ghana, as well as a committee chairperson at the University of Ghana who will be looking into the matter. We'll ask the questions whether this chairperson is still fit to chair this committee when the matter comes before it.
She wrote him essays to review, visited his office 3 times, and he gave her good feedback on her academic work.
So the German situation, academic freedom. So Google what we mean by academic freedom in the first place.
Not everything felt normal. Professor Jampo wanted her to wear high heels in his office.
Thank you. High heels?
What's the name of high heels?
And then, one Sunday afternoon, Abigail received a strange phone call from him.
How are you? Fine, thank you.
He began to tease her and accuse her of always being formal around him.
Formal. You want to talk about work, nothing else. It's sabudenche.
Abigail tried her best not to upset Jampo, who became increasingly personal and said he wanted to come over to her house.
Who is not married and doesn't want a decent lady who is also caring? Who of them want?
She reminded him she was a student and told him she wasn't interested in a relationship.
Well, right now, that's why I'm not really interested.
But Professor Jampo ignored this.
Oh, prepare your mind because I'll be coming very soon.
Eventually, Abigail managed to persuade him to meet in a public place, a mall, instead of her home, later that evening. We knew we would have to be cautious. Long before Abigail met Professor Jampo, we interviewed a number of his former students who alleged they had been sexually harassed by him. Before Abigail reached the shopping mall, we knew Jampo had already crossed red lines over the phone. But we wanted to be sure of his intentions towards his mentee, our reporter. Abigail showed me footage of their encounter. As soon as Jampo arrived, he insisted on buying her shoes as she had reluctantly agreed to on the phone.
You want to buy something?
I told you right into so let me buy one. One for school, one for
Okay. I don't want to inconvenience.
you kissed violence in the phone.
Pardon?
Having kissed violence in the phone.
Have I ever been
Kissed violence in the phone.
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction. If you look at my responses to the BBC's allegations and all that, I made mention of the fact that we cannot talk about strengthening or building strong institutions if we don't allow them to work. And I believe that the University of Ghana has got its own credible internal mechanisms that can handle competently some of these issues. And so if the decision is to ask me to step aside while they do investigation, I think I welcome that decision, and I'll submit myself through the investigation processes. So I don't have issues with that. It's a step in the right direction. I will submit myself through the due processes.
If you look at the BBC's own title, they said we're investigating alleged so-called sex for grade. And I'm sure you've seen the video, and you should answer whether it has to do with sex for grade or whatever. It has got nothing to do with a relationship between a lecturer and a student. It has everything to do with a lecturer and a friend. Somebody who was sent to come and trap. In the process of her entrapment, she became a friend, and we had our conversation as friends. And some of the conversations were very informal, but we are all mindful of the fact that it had got nothing to do with my professional relationship with a student and all that. And so if you have looked at the video, it has got nothing to do with somebody having sex and changing. How do you talk about sex for grade between a lecturer and somebody who is not his student? And so it is misleading, but it seems to me that I explained the circumstances to them, and it seems to me that there are people behind the scenes trying to pull the strings just to be able to embarrass me and all that. Because if you speak to the BBC, they tend to understand your point of view. I've written extensively. I'm going to give you copies of these letters. This is my first letter I wrote to them. It's an 11-pager. The second letter, it's here, and then the third letter explaining. And I made a lot of points, raised a lot of issues with what we were seeking to do. But some way, somehow, they decided not to factor anything that I have said in this letter into their own reportage.
What we intend to do is to investigate the matter, follow our processes, and if these gentlemen are found culpable, recommend appropriate sanctions to the Vice Chancellor to apply, because he's a chief disciplinarian. The university will not say that these are cases that don't happen, but you see, you can only investigate when there's proof. And in fact, in our response to the BBC, we asked for the evidence that they have to help us with our own investigations. And initially, now they've said no, and so they want us to properly apply for it if we are going to do. And if they bring it to us, then that's the evidence to proceed on.
What happens to these two professors while investigations go on?
Well, I think the senior management of the university will soon make a decision, and you will know what the decision is. If they are found to be obstructing the processes, then the university will have to take the appropriate measures. But it's not for me to decide. It's for senior management to decide what to do. Ours is to take the evidence we have and to begin our investigations, and in fact we've already started. But I must say that in the cases of sexual harassment, really, usually it's difficult to prove. So it's not as if the university doesn't take these cases seriously. The university takes them very seriously.
So when the person knows that the spotlight is on me for all the negative reasons, they tend to be more cautious. But if you have not reported them, then they go on doing what they want to do, and you are the victim, and you continue being victimized.
Did this particular? It was advertised as sex for grades.
Yeah.
You've watched it. Did you see sex for grades in there?
Well, I think many people have commented on that, but nonetheless, I mean, the simple answer is no. At least not as it involves Ghana, but it doesn't mean that this is not a serious issue to investigate, because our policy has been breached, in the sense that all the definitions of sexual harassment and misconduct, if you are misconducting yourself in a way that is, I mean, it was inappropriate for you to be seeking all the things that we saw in the video. And so the policy itself is breached. And then we also have the code of conduct, okay, or code of ethics of members, senior members of the university, that is also breached. It is, I think, based on those that the university decided to interdict and then to let investigations go on and be sure that we actually investigate something out of this. You cannot take a decisive decision on somebody when you haven't heard them. And so we want to hear them. The documentary is like the first point at which we receive something to work with. The next thing is to invite people who think that they have been victimized in times past or they are currently being victimized to come forward.
So so that's an interesting point. I saw it in the cinema. I was asking, what do you mean? What you're saying is that you're going to ask people who may have encountered these two lecturers before or have similar
others, or any others,
to come forward.
Come forward. Come forward. Because we really want a congenial atmosphere where learning can take place, where teaching can take place without intimidation.
I fully endorse the University of Ghana action. It is beyond education. It is in employment, in HR. It's all over the place, in every sector of the economy, not just education. We should look at the issue of integrity, national integrity. In the area of education, it's all the more important because the education sector is the area where you least expect one type of corruption or the other. And when it comes to promiscuity, particularly a sector where you have considerable involvement of churches. It is a sector that should be considered particularly sensitive when it comes to morality issues.
Right, and that was Professor Yanka. Now, start with my guest, and the BBC story actually, like a similar one I referred to 2017 by the Guardian newspaper that did a survey of about 120 universities in the United Kingdom, and also through the Right to Information Act, got information from the universities about reports of sexual harassment. Was clear that there was evidence of sexual harassment in a situation they called endemic proportions. The BBC's story said academic institutions in West Africa have increasingly been facing allegations of sexual harassment by lecturers. This type of abuse is said to be endemic, but it's almost never proven. After gathering dozens of testimonies, BBC Africa Eye sent undercover journalists posing as students inside the University of Lagos and the University of Ghana. The female reporters were sexually harassed, propositioned, and put under pressure by senior lecturers at the institutions, all the while wearing secret cameras. Okay, so my first, which appears to be the very obvious thing to commence this discussion with is, Martin, you have watched this documentary. I suppose all of you have done so. It commences with a warning to you who is watching. It was a warning to you watching about disturbing footage of sexual nature. Did you find that warning necessary or any evidence of it?
Well, Sam, to be straight, not in what I saw. Not in what I saw. I didn't see sex, okay? But to the extent that, you know, some people are very sensitive, maybe it's justified. Because, you know, when this matter came up, then it reminded me about an incident that took place about 12 years ago. A lawyer told a lady that, oh, I like your curves. And instantly, the lady was offended, okay? So that tells you that we are not the same. So to that extent, yes, it may be put in there because people have different level of resistance to, you know, offensive material. Okay. Like in law, we say the thin scale cases. So some people have thin scales. So you have to put in a disclaimer to avoid any problems.
We'll get into the issue. Now, Yusuf Saini, did you find any evidence in the documentary manifesting, justifying the title, Sex for Grades?
No, there was no such evidence. I mean, but I understand that such evidence could not be on tape because that would have straight into the realm of pornography. BBC would have been engaged in shooting a pornography.
You mean you couldn't have evidence of a lecturer
having
tampering with grades.
No, having
fixing
sexual
grades
intercourse
after having you know gotten sex.
No, having sexual intercourse with clear evidence that that intercourse was intended to influence him in awarding grace to the lady who was the
You couldn't have that on the tape.
You couldn't have that.
Could you
that
have
that
had evidence of the lecturers tampering with grades?
Well, you can't have that evidence. How do lecturers tamper with grades? I mean, lecturers, how would they tamper with grades? They can only tamper with grades when there's a cause and an effect. Okay, you have to link the two.
Explain that.
That is, you see a lecturer propositioning a lady to temper or award grades, and then there's a correlative evidence of the lecturer doing that. Because every now and then lecturers mark and remark papers, and so and adjust remarks actually when their students do not perform very well. That cannot be said to be tempering of the results.
Okay.
So you could not have expected. I did not expect when I saw the title "Sex for Grades." I did not expect to see any sex in the video. I did not.
But you were warned.
Actual sex.
I was warned.
You were warned.
I was warned because
that what you are going to watch has disturbing footage of sexual nature.
Yes, because you know it had disturbing footage
of sexual nature, not sex.
Not sex.
Okay.
Because you see some of the side
guy,
the side chick guy or the side guy, you know, that was offensive.
Right.
Okay, and emotionally distressing. I mean, if you were a parent and then you are put in the position of somebody having to watch the daughter being suggested to, that could be very distressing emotionally. Okay. And that's why you were warned.
All right. So, Pranka, I don't know, do you agree somewhat with Inusa that the title, the documentary's, content did not confirm the title, strictly speaking?
That would be if the investigators tell us that all that we have seen is everything that they did. I think we are proceeding on that basis. Otherwise, it's possible that they are keeping something from us. That's possible. We have not been told whether the footage we have watched is everything that they did, or there are other things to it than that, such that maybe before a committee, they will have to now play that to authenticate whatever they have said. But taking what has been put out there, literally, and without additions or subtractions, you may not be able to come to that definitive conclusion that sex for grades.
Will your suggestions or position change if you were told the caption was only generic to represent harassment, the power imbalance, abuse and misuse of trust, power, positioned by lecturers in institutions that are supposed to act like in loco parentis for the students?
Yes, my position would have changed. I agree with that. You see, and that's why I will say that I will agree to the extent that what they said was metaphorical.
Okay.
You know, I will agree to that extent.
All right.
However, let me say that if you take the raw footage as we have viewed, and you take the literal meaning of what has been given, there is a little misleading. You know, if you take the literal meaning. But if you go into metaphor, or as I have said, they may have been privy to something that is not out there, then we can still come to that conclusion. And you have rightly pointed out that, you see, they were seeking to establish a point that in the various universities, when they were going out there to start all this project, what they were seeking to establish was that in the various universities, sexual harassment goes on, and that on the basis of that sexual harassment, it results in maybe changes, people getting grades that they do not deserve. That is the basis upon which they set out to establish this. And you may agree with them to that extent, that yes, it was metaphorical, we should not just take it literally. And you know, we as lawyers, we've now gone beyond literal to purpose and all that.
I know. So we'll get into the details.
Very well.
But let me get to Kuku. And the question is the entrapment method? Professor Jampo says this was clear entrapment, and there are people who say they have some ideas about the particular lady, but it doesn't matter which lady it is. This is a difficult thing, you know, for some men to avoid. Is the entrapment method, or rather hard evidence of actual sex and actual grade fixing, what is required to come to the conclusions that have provoked this discussion?
Well, you know, I've had a difficulty with this whole thing about entrapment and all those things. This is not the first time we are going to look at that methodology. In any case, it is as old as undercover journalism. From the 1880s, go to read the literature. It's always been there. And there's always going to be a certain ethical challenge or dilemma relative to that. So I admit that. I have no problem with those who believe it is not a good method and want to criticize it and things. They are entitled to that. But I've always said something. Look, the cure for this so-called entrapment is integrity. Integrity is your ammo, your arsenal against this so-called entrapment. And usually, undercover journalists, when they want to do these things, it's not just a flight of imagination. It is because they hear things and fingers and voices are pointed in certain directions. There's always that base from which they proceed. And I've been listening to all the discussions going on. But this phenomenon is not new. This phenomenon is out there. We've all been talking about it and all that. Perhaps we've not come forward anything of evidential value to pinpoint in specific directions. But we all see it's there. So if it's there, then lower the entrapment chorus.
I've been told stories by ladies, and I have no reason to doubt them.
Yes.
It happens.
Yes. Look, just a bit of a digression. This judges thing, Tiger Eye did.
Correct.
All over. We all knew it for years.
And it's not stopped, really.
Yes, and even Chief Justice, over the years, different Chief Justice had publicly spoken against such things.
You know, I'm serious. When I say it's not stopped, you go to the court,
the
court area.
You
wait. You get to the court area, and these clerks, and they are still the bailiffs who are paid to go and set things. They will never do it unless you part with some 10 CD here and there. And the Chief Justice just gave a warning recently that the judges must stop giving whatever allowance kind of tips to the people who are paid to serve them.
Exactly.
Okay, could continue.
Yeah. So that is the environment within which operatives, undercover journalists, or private detectives, or whatever, will proceed. Beyond that, of course, you have to then subject the thing to a certain forensic analysis in terms of factual thing. I'm talking of if a project is
so
put
as we
out
begin
there.
to get into the detail, Kweku, tell me this. I'll come to Martin. So this is the story we have heard from those who have produced the documentary. In the same light, we ought to be taking the other narrative from those who are involved, at least those who have come forward to speak. Until we go through a certain due process to sieve and verify the information to determine who is telling the truth and who is lying. We should use both.
Exactly.
Mr. Jampo, Professor Jampo says this Abigail lady he was told had been to his office like 20 times looking for him, and that she had made things that appeared, you know, giving a man a bit of a difficulty. So, will you still say the entrapment method is good for such uncovering such evidence?
You see, I'm so challenged because I don't want a situation where as if I'm looking at this specific project, and in view of the fact that it's going to be investigated, and Jampo and the rest will appear before the committee. So I have a certain difficulty. I don't know, others may not have, that I want to look at a general picture and not the specific in terms of this.
No, but just a bit about this specific. That is it fair for, if that is true, is it fair for that person to turn around to play victim? And is it fair to blame the person who has had, you know, these visits upon visits and phone calls and conversations that, you know, have gone into a certain level,
see,
to blame as having done something wrong?
I might sound hypocritical. Me sitting here, I'm not sure if I would have been able to beat that trap. I'm not sure if I might succeed in beating that kind of trap. The animal in me might come out to the fore, and not me, but the animal. That's the problem we all have. And that's what I mean by a certain integrity. When you are in a certain situation, you are a lecturer at a university, you see that environment, and somebody is coming to you. In this case, wasn't his student as such, but it's still to do with some mentorship. The person is seeking some inspiration or some support and things from you. You see, I'm being hypocritical. Ask me whether I have not done something that could easily have put me in trouble. But you've invited us to discuss such a matter. It's a very uncomfortable subject for me, okay? But whilst I do not want to judge the individual Professor Jampo, I'm seeing that these things perhaps are lessons that we should reinforce our moral armory in such situations so as to be able to avoid it. Look, it's not easy. It's easier saying it. Okay, here we are. We're going to sit here and pontificate and say all sorts of things, very beautiful things. But wait till one of us is caught in that situation. When you have this beautiful daughter of Eve coming and saying, oh, look, you can slip. I'm being honest with you. You can slip. And so it's so difficult. I didn't want to discuss this subject matter. I'm being honest with you. Yesterday, I called the producer and told him that he should get the experts. Gender people to come and discuss this.
It looks like, and to talk about calling experts and women, it must be stated that I have been told by production that they actually assembled some women. Apparently, some of them at some late hour withdrew, and some of them were simply unavailable. I think we may throw a challenge. Those of them we know who have some expertise and have some encounter with students in this area and have very strong views about this matter. Let me place a call to our production and we can have them.
If I may summarize,
no, but I want to ask this small thing before you summarize. It sounds like there's a nurse in there.
Did
he work with this team?
No, there's no nurse in there because it isn't as if an opportunity didn't exist for an nurse to be in there. But our nurse declined to be part of this particular project because he's doing so many other things. And I did not want an nurse there. BBC are capable. They have, in fact, if it comes to infrastructure, logistica, and all those things, they have more than Tiger Eye, especially the Africa Eye, BBC Africa. They work with Tiger Eye. Let's not deny that. Yes, number 12. Yeah, they work with Africa and they still do so many things. So there's a close relationship between Tiger Eye and BBC Africa.
Okay, now proceed to your summary.
See, all this argument about the title, if I didn't know that that was the title, but they indicated in terms of the correspondence to the targets, that beyond this title is just a general theme.
That's right.
We are looking at to investigate the issues of sexual harassment among lecturers and to investigate the issues of sexual abuse by university lecturers. So they had subsidiaries within the genre. So for me, I think the argument about sex for grades and this is for wrong title, I didn't see that. It's actually of no moment to me. Let's go do a content analysis of the things. And to be honest with you, it's the committee. This whole thing is at the committee level. And it's not restricted to Legon. its impact, the reports that will come out of this process may help create a culture of deterrence to all those animals out there, especially the men. But women too are part of it, but especially the men.
Okay.
We are prone to creating such problems more than the women. Okay? So to be honest, perhaps it will be some education through negative experience for all of us.
The Nigerian professors, we understand one has been dismissed. One was suspended first by his church because he's a pastor in a church, and then subsequently also interdicted by his university. And then a day or two after, University of Ghana also took a similar situation, interdicting the two professors. Well, as long as we can hear from Professor Jampo, he says that's a fair process. He is willing to go through the investigations that will go on. But Martin,
yes, sir.
Would you say, and we are sort of bringing a bit of a focus to the actual documentary, to the Ghanaian situation as regards the two, professors who are involved. Would you say Professor Jampo's situation is different from the others? Will it be a fair outcome if Professor Jampo is adjudged guilty? That first, this is not his student, seem not to come from even the university, and then he says there was some friendship.
Yeah, something. This one here. This is very difficult.
A quick one. It might sound potentially prejudicial, but perhaps I need to input that relative to the due process that the committee will be going through. If BBC, and I'm told they have agreed to cooperate, apparently have extra material. They're talking about some 12 audiovisual things that they will bring to bear on the thing. So if we're looking at just this recording or audio that has been shown,
we'll limit ourselves to what we know now and keep the discussions on what we
know. Because of the question you raised.
That's exactly what I'm doing. So on the basis of what you have seen, Martin, don't let anybody preempt you.
Yes.
On the basis of what you have seen,
that's a good one.
Is his situation different from the others? In the case of the others, we knew they are their students.
Yes.
We knew one of them, the pastor, the lady was seeking admission. And then in the case of Professor Jampo, we know it's not his students.
Wow. Sam, I think to be very fair, the honest truth is that whichever way I look at it, to give a very fair answer, it will be a bit prejudicial to the investigations. Yeah.
The investigations is not a court. Even matters in court, which are of public interest. We have discussed them here.
Very, very honest. And most especially, see, maybe I should even disclose my affiliation. I play football with Professor Jampo every Sunday evening on Legon campus. We have a work faith club, that's his name. So maybe there's even unconscious bias. So it's good that I even state this. So to be very, very candid, you know how if I want to speak honestly, it will be prejudicial because, so I think the best we should do is that maybe let's discuss the general policy, the general sexual harassment policy, and look at
we could deal with the specifics to start, and then we get into the general and the questions of codes of discipline and how they ought to be implemented in these universities, what the university should be doing to protect the girls, from the predators, and the role that the girls themselves ought to play. The questions that Inusa raised about some girls also being, guilty of getting into some of these things. We are told about some lady who wrote an exam, didn't write anything on the paper. All she did was put her naked picture and telephone number.
You sure?
Yeah, suggestive.
Wow.
So back to that question.
Yeah. You see, and then, okay, so let's say this, like we usually say, a man is innocent until proven guilty, okay? Yes, so to that extent, from what I'm seeing, I'm not going to pronounce him guilty because it's not been proven yet. And most especially, you've heard that there's a lot of raw footage, a lot of it. So that's going to provide the context.
The chairperson of the Legon Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee is categorical that their code, their policy has been breached.
I understand. When I look at the policy, I see where she's coming from. So that basically there's this wide general statement that, look, as soon as they find that there is power imbalance between the two persons, they are veering towards a breach.
The Jampo situation, that's not his student.
Sam, that's why I said that one, please. I think, as I've mentioned, somebody. So in other ways, to summarize it, this is a friend.
He's actually not a student.
But was made to look like a student, you see. So that's what makes it complex. So I think that to that extent, maybe let me reserve judgment on it. It's quite...
When she approached Jampo, she didn't say, I am your student. She was seeking further help because Jampo has an area that she's aware Jampo has expertise in. That's why it was a talk about further studies and the rest. Still, you want to recuse yourself because of your...
Of course, so from what you are narrating, that will go for him as showing innocence. Okay. But as I've said, because we haven't heard the other side, and also because of the fact that we'll be seen to be conducting a media trial. So maybe if we did the general, we'll be safe. At least he's put out a robust defense out there. Yeah, you know, he's not media shy. He's put out a very robust defense. And I expect that in the same way, he will appear before the committee and do the same. And of course, BBC will also come with their footage. And then we'll see how it pans out.
The committee chairperson, will she be able to sit on this process? She says their policy has been breached. She's clear about that.
Okay, so I think to the extent that the general public is asking for her to recuse herself, it's fair. There are other persons, so it's fair for her to recuse herself. Yes, that would be better.
If she doesn't?
Oh, looking at it, I'm expecting that she will, because the general public, to have said that she hasn't seen a breach and all that. You know, this is the same, what do you call it, same professor who is sat on the committee, and they've dismissed other lecturers. You know, she said in the past 2 to 3 years, they've dismissed about 3 lecturers, right? Yeah, so she's been on the committee, and she's been able to do a good job. Yet this one, if these are her preliminary remarks, personally, I do not think that she necessarily has prejudiced the matter, but because of the general statement that justice not only ought to be done, but ought to be manifestly seen to be done. So because of that statement, I think Dr. Amwakwihini should recuse.
Okay. Do you want to take it from that point, Kwenka?
You know, something, first let me state that what we are discussing and the terms of reference of that committee is not a criminal inquisition. That's not it at all. And so we have to distinguish that from a civil inquisition as to whether or not systemic procedures have been breached, whether codes of ethics have been breached and all that. It is not a criminal trial. So we have to take it off from this. Unless you can establish crime, which will go beyond the university at that stage. Because the university does not have power to try criminal matters of that nature. They can only look at the civil wrongs and the codes that have actually been breached. But you see, something, my brother tried to stay away from something for fear of prejudice and etc. He may be right to some extent. But this is the position. You realize that the one who has actually been in this situation, Prof, has virtually acquitted and discharged himself of any wrongdoing. I mean, so it does not also prevent us from running some commentary on the matter. Because he says that based on what has been presented, I think that no offense has been committed. It's his past judgment. And then the chairperson also says our code have been breached.
In fact, all of you coming here this morning knew that you were going to discuss this.
Absolutely.
And so please proceed and discuss.
That's exactly what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
And we're expecting to see the women.
So what I'm saying is that, you see, in every case, you listen to both sides, isn't it? As lawyers, that's what we've been trained to do. You listen to both sides. You make your case, the other person will make and then an independent arbiter will be able to come to a certain determinative conclusion that this is the way to go. And this is the matter that we're actually discussing. And having reviewed the footage, as I have said, and the university's code of ethics, as stated, I listened carefully to Ank Kwekubako when he was making his submission. And he made a very, very wonderful submission. He's saying that that title, below it and beneath it, you had other subheadings
right.
as to what exactly they were looking for. So not necessarily just sex in return for grades, but how people in the position of trust, such as lecturers, use those positions in a manner as to destroy the moral fiber of our society. I think they also sought to establish that. You know, and that's why Hank Kweku was running away from it. He said he's incompetent to comment into detail on those matters. But the university's code of ethics, where provisions are made, you know, our constitution is very clear that you cannot punish a person for an offense that is not written and a punishment prescribed for it. The constitution is very clear on that. But if the code stipulates that any conduct such as that of, for example, okay, is contrary to same, then it means that certain penal consequences ought to be exacted if it is established. So at this particular stage, I will say that the code versus the conduct is what is going to play out. Because the committee then is going to read out the code and then say that, look, by this conduct of yours, you've breached this or that or that. And remember that even after the committee has sat, if they engage in any act that he finds that is unlawful, they can go for a certiorari right to quash the whole thing. The decision that will be arrived at. They can go for that. For example, if they raise the issue of the fact that she has already prejudiced the outcome of the case, and then they ask that she should recuse herself and she does not, it will be recorded. When it goes before a court, they will make an inquiry whether or not that conduct by the chairperson before the sitting amounted to prejudging whatever she was going to listen to. And of course, you know that when such a thing arises, the courts will not hesitate at all in striking it down. So it's preliminary, but I think that even the university, their own lawyers will sit with the chairperson, and then they will have discussions, and whether it is not going to be in her interest and in the interest of the university. Because, look, you know very well as lawyers that when you go to the higher court, they are not going to look at whether or not the person did what he's alleged to have done. They are going to look at procedure at that stage. And if you were supposed to recuse yourself that you did not, then they'll strike it down. And then that will be the stage where sometimes you have the public crying out loud that the person committed this thing. Everybody saw it. How come the person is walking around? You know, but they do not know that everything operates within the realm of rules and regulations. So, for me, without passing any judgment, and I don't intend to do any such at all, it's going to be a very interesting one ahead. Because as they have, Uncle Kweku indicated, other footages will be brought. Prof will be given the right to defend himself. And then he raises the appropriate defenses. If they don't find any merit in it, they apply the appropriate sanctions. And I mean, they will say that, look, you breach section A or B or C. What
we are reliably informed here on Newsfile that Professor Margaret Amwakohene will not chair the hearings, and that a subcommittee has been set up to deal with this specific matter, and it will be chaired by a retired justice of the Superior Court of Ghana. Is that good news?
Well, why is it consequent upon the pronouncement made by Amakwene? Or is just part of the administrative procedure in the university? I mean, first of all, let's get things straight. Dr. Amwakohene's statement is based on a prima facie breach of the rules of the university. And that leads the university to conclude that prima facie, the rules of engagement of the university, sexual harassment, the policy on sexual harassment and misconduct has been breached. And that's what led...
Prima facie means
on the face
of the evidence they have seen, there appears to be a wrong, needing further investigations.
And that's why they've taken that action. And so, until we know the reason, probably they believe that this matter is of so much, I mean, so grave a nature that they want the decision of the committee to be, I mean, foolproof. And probably that's why they are going for a retired justice.
Taking the turn of events with the VC's accuser. You know, there was also that aspect.
Yes. That was quite
VC's accuser, and I put accuser in quotation marks. What do you make? What do you make of the general claims in the documentary that they spoke to many students or former students of these lecturers who accused them of sex for grades without proof or verification of these allegations.
Exactly. That is how I saw the intervention of my good brother Kekubaku. And in matters of underground coverage or reportage, the people would have chosen their victims already. Okay, there have been overwhelming evidence that calls for now some pictorial evidence, some hardcore evidence to be able to link what they have been hearing with what they think is happening at an institution or a place of work.
So at the hearings, disciplinary process, it is your expectation that they will provide even
more evidence.
Okay.
Even more evidence. I mean, they didn't just, the University of Ghana has a lot of lecturers. Okay, they didn't just settle on Professor Jampo, and we don't want to put Professor Jampo on the spot.
Exactly.
But everybody must understand that they had the reason, the basis for choosing Professor Jampo. That basis might be.
There are two of them affected, not him alone.
Not him alone. That basis might be proven in an investigation or debunked. But the fact is that they had reason to believe that what they were hearing about those lecturers, the two lecturers, needed further investigation. Now, they chose the unconventional approach, probably because of the power relations between the students and the lecturers. That it was going to be exceedingly difficult to get students to come out and testify against their lecturers.
Of course.
That's why they chose the unconventional method of taking somebody from outside the university. What did they want to demonstrate? They wanted to demonstrate that when lecturers come in close proximity to their students, misconduct or inappropriate conduct occurs. Okay, that lecturers exploit the power relationship between them and their students and engage in misconduct. Okay, and that was the essence of the video. We should look at it, and whether you look at the video from the point of view of the fact that sex did not occur, or that the principal agent here, Kiki Modi, was not a student. Look at the context of the video. Was she propositioned?
You referred first to the Dr. Paul Pame Batako.
Batako?
Yeah. You referred to his. He said, "I want to be your side guy." You know? And you say, parents will look at that and feel very distressed.
Very distressed.
Okay.
And you don't need further evidence to link what he meant by side guy to what was going to eventually happen. And this was a lecturer. And it is true, my brother, that this matter is just like corruption. It's just like corruption. It's a moral decadence in society. That somehow the victims are so powerless that they might be unwilling to own up, to come out. It takes some confidence. 2 days ago I was reading about Dr. Elizabeth Ohini.
Yeah.
That she had the courage to tell her story 50-something years after it occurred. And that it was only when she told her story that another woman of prominent status in society called her and wept on the phone. That woman had lived with her story all this while, could not even tell it to her children.
So is it the lecturers, the university, or the victims that must take the bigger part of the blame here? When you look at the sexual harassment at epidemic levels in the UK universities, the survey that was done, almost 300 claims were made against either lecturer students or student or even staff among the staff. And the story is told that in some of the situations, the university's decision was to pay out in settlement so that the matter doesn't go out because their reputation was at stake.
That is the reputational damage to the university compromises the ability of the university to exact punishment and even make the punishment public. It was only 2 days ago that we heard that 3 universities had been sacked.
Three lecturers.
Three lecturers had been sacked. So why did they feel refuse or neglect to let the public know that these matters, these actions had been taken against lecturers? Because of the reputational damage that we done to the university. So the university authorities are also complicit.
But
brother,
you hear them from Legon, from KNUST, from University of Education,
wherever there is tertiary education,
from Cape Coast.
Even
those in charge of these committees are saying that the victims are simply reluctant to report.
Because the victims are powerless. Yeah, you have to understand the power imbalance.
But Honorable, not only that, look, research has shown that sexual offenses, even in the UK, they say only about 20% of rapes and 18% of all sexual victimizations are reported. So
why?
It's a general trend.
No, it's not a general trend.
Stigma.
Because of stigma. Because of stigma.
Exactly. So it's
and the stigma in the university is huge. You know, somebody. I mean, in the matters that have come out, I've read one lady who said that her parents said they didn't want. She wanted to report, and they didn't want her to be the reason why the lecturer will be sacked.
Yes.
Okay. They didn't want to bear the moral scar.
Yes. So that underscores the point that it's not only power imbalance.
And also out of the fear that once one lecturer is punished, there may be other lecturer friends of that lecturer who may punish you, the student.
Okay. So you must look at it holistically. And I agree with you. Sexual crimes don't get reported because of the stigma.
Okay.
In the United Kingdom, they know their rights. But in this case, power imbalance is so huge.
Yeah. In fact, in the one I'm referring to, a staff who alleged that she had been harassed made a complaint, and she wanted it to be treated informally. When the university's decision was that we'll treat it as a formal complaint, she was unhappy about that.
Yeah. You are a lawyer. Marital cases. Why do you think that we go to the chambers to hear it? People are lawfully married. They want to separate. But matters of the pillow are not discussed in open court. Why do we go to chambers? Because of the stigma. Because what will come out will be so embarrassing. Even you, the complainant, now becomes a victim by the way you were treated. It's so complex. That is why I agree with my brother. The integrity of a person, it is not impossible for lecturers to always be in parentis locus with the students.
To give my brother some information, if you look at social media in the last 3 days, people have come out to give their stories, but they are unable to give their real names. Because that they don't want their real identity to be known.
That is the stigma.
They state their stories, but they are.
Can you imagine what will happen if you are married? Can you imagine how your husband will begin to look at you?
What should be done about that? Because that is also helping the situation fester. It's like corruption. If we don't expose it, it will continue to be there. It thrives in that.
That's the truth. But you see, society too, stigma. You know, even let's look at even our laws. You realize that, for example, when a child commits certain offenses, you don't disclose the identity of the child at a certain age and all that. All that are for a purpose.
Yes.
You know, that to be able to protect the person as the person grows. You can imagine that a 12-year-old girl is brutally raped, defiled.
Yes.
You know, and then you disclose the name.
No.
That will live with the girl forever, and the whole world will know that this is the lady anytime she's walking out there. So mostly we try to balance all these things. You balance this moral upbringing against the fact that society itself frowns upon certain things.
So it's not exactly the universities which are supposed to be acting in local parentis for these students that is failing. And when we say when we say universities act in local parentis, it means the parents are giving them to be the guardians of the students. So when you take your child to the not child really.
No,
Yeah.
they
are supposed to act as the parents in the university.
I wanted to make that
are they discharging that duty appropriately?
No, that's why I wanted to make this point. You see, again, let me take us back to social media. If you've read a lot of the stories, in the last few days, a lot of people have come out to state their stories.
Right.
Yeah. Even some of the lecturers we are discussing now, some people have had personal issues. They've started coming out to say that yes, they've been they've had this problem over the period with this person or that person. I'm not able to mention specific names for obvious reasons, but people have started coming out. Yeah. What it tells you is that this was just a spark, including that will let us lawyers increase the intensity of the debate as to what we could actually do to curb it going forward. But Kweku has said it all. It boils down to one thing: whether or not the person in that position and responsibility will hold that integrity. That is the foundation of everything. You see, you could talk about anything, but something, these things that we are discussing now is because of the BBC reportage. But aren't we aware? Yeah. Before this time, aren't we aware that these things are going on? Yeah. We've all attended the same universities. You know, and I don't want us to go into the nitty-gritties and things that happened during our time and all that. That's not what we are we shouldn't. But now that this issue, it is for us to go to the debate to find out measures to curb it going forward. But again, I have listened carefully to social commentators, and there's a certain drift that from now, what's also going to happen is that certain male lecturers, and maybe the majority of them, are going to hold themselves back. Even those who have genuine reasons to assist will now be afraid.
No, they need not be.
No,
they need not be.
Hold on.
Look,
that is even to suggest that this is going to stop.
Let me make a point. You see, so what it means is that, what I'm telling you is that it is going to stop. This practice will stop. Because people are now going to be extra cautious.
You just said it's as old as corruption. Corruption hasn't stopped.
It began from Adam.
You know, but maybe you mentioned something when we started.
To minimize it.
Our brother Anas did an expose on the judiciary. I'm not able to pass any judgment. But after his expose, are we saying that there's no longer any issue there?
There is.
Of course not.
I don't have any evidence. But are we saying that completely we don't have any? No. I don't have any evidence. But the reason why I'm saying this is that maybe this discussion and what is going on and the outcome of what will happen in Legon will minimize it.
Right. Yes.
So that's why we are fighting.
But not stop. Just a minute before Koku comes in. Look, what is happening is a tipping point. And in every society, if you look at the progress of every society, there comes a time where you need to change, take action on certain things. And you need a tipping point. Rosa Parks will not, integration will not have happened in American universities if Rosa Parks did not start up. I mean, it happens. So for us in Ghana, this is a tipping point. For the Americans in Hollywood, it was a Me Too movement. Took many years, but it has to happen. That we interrogate the processes.
So he says this is a tipping point, and the UK example I referred to in 2017, all that huge numbers where they said it was in epidemic levels, those who knew the actual situation actually said that was only a tip of the iceberg. And we are talking about a society where there appears to be a lot more transparency. There are rules, and a student knows that a lecturer cannot do anything about my results, really. Some university staff cannot, do anything about. If it's an admission process, he will not do like this lady went seeking admission from that pastor and lecturer. You don't seek admission through a lecturer. In the UK, he just picks his phone, her phone, and then the process is done.
Well, of course, except PhDs, where maybe sometimes you need a supervisor who will then,
Right. In that regard, what can the universities do to ensure that the girls, particularly who are, victimized, who get themselves in this kind of situation, will have an improved environment to be able to function properly without fear?
Well, I know today we are talking about the universities, so perhaps it's legitimate that the focus is there. But honestly, this phenomenon goes beyond the universities.
That's right.
Media houses, our own entities, the churches, workplaces. It's a phenomenon out there. And perhaps we may end up using the university's thing as a catalyst in trying to resolve the challenge, which I think would not be entirely wiped out. It's not going to happen.
All right.
We are human beings. There is that element, an animal in us. So we are never going to be able to eliminate this thing comprehensively, even with comprehensive sexuality education.
We just discovered that they have codes of discipline. They have policies.
Yes.
What should be done?
I was going to look at the reporting lines. How is it? And I'm going to express some opinion based on ignorance because I really don't know. But what mechanisms have been put in place for victims to report? And how often has that happened? Maybe we need to do a certain research into that. Okay, when the victims report, what is the first reaction of the authorities?
Okay.
Are there efforts to protect the perpetrator and make the victim look like you are a bad person?
Are there efforts to protect the victim too?
Yes. In fact, the emphasis should be there.
Yeah.
Even before you investigate, authenticate, or verify, that victim, quote unquote, at this stage, that report needs some protection.
Yeah, they said there's a hotline. The University of Ghana, I heard them say that there's a
How
hotline.
often has it been used?
There's an office.
Okay, because we can't pretend that subculture is not there. It's there. If they check and that thing has not been applied or used often, there's something wrong.
Okay.
Okay, but to be honest with you, let's wait for the committee to begin its work.
Okay.
Let's see how much information BBC will produce to help all of us come to a judgment.
Okay.
I feel right now I feel the pain.
I want us to take a break in the next 5 minutes, but before then, just a minute from you and perhaps from Inusa. So when they get to school at the various universities, those who don't have the codes, they must have them. The orientation process, all of this must be part of it.
Excellent.
And so, how else?
So that is it. If only, and of course we can add more education. So what do you call it? I'm aware University of Ghana, but they have Radio Universe. So perhaps they should begin to play there's adverts on the committee, okay, to give further education. They can erect billboards, very big ones, around very vantage points in the universities. Okay.
They have shared flyers. Some say the flyers is not enough.
Exactly, because after a while they get stuck under piles of paper. So that's what I'm saying.
We get to the university, we're giving a handbook. How many of us read it?
Exactly. So that is the point. So that's what we're saying, that they should
Until the time when you were interested in becoming an SRC president or somebody, you should read the handbook.
Well, we are read the handbook from beginning to end.
And you follow suit, right? Yeah. So the point is that let's increase the range of options. So we need a mosaic approach.
Okay.
So if what we've been doing so far has not increased the number of reportage or the number of reported cases, let's think outside the box. As I said, let's do more radio adverts, let's do the billboards, and then as they are increasingly saying, we should publicize the outcome of the committee sittings.
That's the question I was going to ask.
Yes, we should
publicize them.
Yes, except that
but only shaming those who have been found guilty on them.
Exactly.
And not the victims.
Yes. No.
And do these victims, do they tell their parents too, their experience?
Okay. Right.
And what role do
it does appear some do, but their parents who don't want it to report it.
Yes.
Now, what can they do to also, as it were, avoid the situation where there are false accusations? What should happen to those who make false accusations? Like this Andrea's woman who came to give a suggestion.
She made a false allegation.
She says that she made her claim in a certain context. But it is agreed that the time she made it,
timing,
and the context in which she made it gave the impression that she was saying that the VC has sexually harassed her.
And
she has come forward to say the VC did not harass her. Nonetheless, she makes a next serious allegation of misogyny. The VC suggested she was too beautiful to be able, and didn't have the brain, so to speak, to be able to get the position she was and deal with such a big job. Yes.
even that maybe if she has any evidence to that effect and all that.
How do you avoid false allegations, and how do you punish it?
Sam said that is another serious area that somebody can frame you up. Yeah. But you know that as lawyers, when the person just says it, it doesn't mean that that's the end of it. You have to investigate.
Right.
And if the person is unable to substantiate it, then you retract and apologize. Failing which the other, and that's why yesterday a few friends of mine said what the lady sought to do was to escape defamation suits. You know, that was, I mean, by the clarification she came out to do. Because the initial one was like, it was
talking about the Pizziconi.
Yes. That's what I'm trying to talk about. So it's very difficult. But we have to also ensure that in order to protect, I mean, it's two ways.
Yeah.
We shouldn't just be looking at the interests of the victim alone, but those who are falsely accused also. You know, you may look at my face, you don't like me, and you say that, oh, this thing is a topical issue. Let me go and frame out something and throw it out there and destroy him. And you know that once your name is mentioned, the stigma that will go with it, I mean, people will shy away from you and all that. I wanted to give you, I don't know whether we'll have the opportunity to look at this issue.
No, we won't go to it again. We are taking a break, and I needed just a minute. Yes, do that in 30 seconds.
You see, I was discussing something with my brother. Elsewhere, I've had the opportunity of being a member of a committee to look into sex for grades before. And we've dismissed 2 people.
Great.
Elsewhere.
Teachers?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
In a tertiary institution.
I
don't know.
I was a member of
first of all, also says that they've dismissed 3 lecturers.
I see.
First of all, let me say that I have sympathies for the lady who accused the vice chancellor.
Okay.
You don't, in a formal context, sitting, refer to the physical appearance of a woman in making, or a lady in making your point.
We haven't heard the Vice Chancellor on that, whether that is also true or not true.
Well, so that you don't, but whatever be the case, we are just doing this for information purposes, to educate our people.
Okay.
You don't. That's chauvinistic. That's misogyny. That's sexual harassment.
And we know that's also we know that's also widespread, isn't it? We know that's also widespread, isn't it?
It's very widespread.
Where we seem to think that beautiful ladies don't have the brains to get the position. You remember recently the former EC boss was told how she got a job.
Yes, that's
delicious.
So you don't. It's so bad, and this is because of the male-dominated society in which we are. These are habits that we have cultivated for a very long time.
All right.
And you see, so let me say that we need integrity. We need to get people of integrity. And he said it. We need rules, and the rules must be punitive. We need enforcement of the rules.
Should the rules also include? Should the rules include shaming also those who make false allegations?
Yes, obviously.
All right.
And that counts. I've captured that under transparency.
Okay.
We must do everything in the transparent.
Thank you. On that note, I'd like to just say briefly that the University of Ghana has formally issued a statement dated the 11th of October 2019, and it is information about misrepresentations by Andrea Pizziconi of Africa Integras. And the University of Ghana is now giving the factual basis leading to the situation of, is it a cancellation or abortive contract that she had, and that it had nothing to do with the claims that she sought to make. We take a break here. When we return, we find out how law students who may have been beating a dead horse got beaten. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And a question is being asked by a friend. Stephen says, is there a criminal angle to sexual harassment? If there is dismissal enough? And that is also important to say. There are those, you have heard Professor Jampo say, for example, it's a crime. Why was it not reported to the police? It's no crime.
There are
sexual harassment. You can take at the workplace at the workplace, you can take an action at charge. The sexual harassment as a crime.
Yeah, let's come. There are components. You see?
Okay.
And I like the way you are saying
okay.
it, because what he's saying is actually correct.
Okay.
But the components that you're going to talk about, like sexual harassment,
it's not a crime.
It's not.
So depends on the way you are looking at it. So there's the indecent assault.
You must go further to prove the indecent assault.
Okay.
It is a crime.
Okay.
And also let's come especially to rape. The power imbalance we're talking about.
Okay.
In our criminal
we are not discussing. I'm reading messages. Then we'll go to the law school.
The person wants education.
Right. Yes.
So the power imbalance it can avoid the consent.
Thank you.
Section 14.
Thank you. And you know what? These guys, when we go backstage, they talk about really what they know that goes on, that they have become privy to, that the sex for grades is real. This one says, my brother, are you aware lawyers also get compromised in the conduct of matrimonial cases?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, your legal fees will sink if you elect to go into the into the whatever wahala. Most of us will not pass this utopian test. Okay. Nana Ojiri says that, first of all, it's very unfortunate that a young professor will be in the center of the brouhaha. Let us ask ourselves, what was the purpose of this video? Indeed, there is nothing in the video pointing to sex for grades, really. But for me, the video is seeking to authenticate the rumor out there. Thank you for your message. Okay. Yawan Su Jabo says that the footage doesn't contain enough incriminating evidence to... Okay, so how are you guys looking at the footage, really? To jeopardize Professor Jampo's reputation and career. Don't forget, some women... Okay, I can't project that for you. And they attract men they wish. So let's pay attention to that also. Okay, so Notice says, I'm curious as to how Jampo himself would answer this question. Number 12. Where is the entrapment? Okay. Okay. Then he says she's not a friend. So we should also clarify that she's not a friend, despite how long they have had to mingle. She's not a friend. Thank you. I'll share some of your messages also later. Now, in the course of this week, law students, we are told, from the various law faculties came together, even though we know that the facts include that those who failed and the batches of those who failed over the years were part of the protest. They took a petition and decided to hold a demonstration and make a petition to the Attorney General, to the President, and to a number of other people to seek to influence reform. And what they mean by reform is practically an expansion of the law school so that more people can gain entry, more qualified people can gain entry. And they are seeking some sort of transparency also in the process. But it didn't seem to have turned out the way they thought. Let's look at this briefly.
The seriousness of the issue, we are fully appreciative of the immensity of the matter, and the steps will be taken to address it. And of course, the issue of law reform, law education, it calls for a holistic view. I think that the access to the LLB program, of course, must even be measured against access to the professional law course itself. So it requires a comprehensive approach. I'm very happy that today we brought the petition to the Attorney General. The Attorney General will take account of all the issues that we have raised, will duly present to the General Legal Council, and then appropriate measures will be fashioned out to address the issue of access to LLB as well as access to the professional law course. And then, of course, the practice of law in Ghana as a whole.
Aren't you worried about the low numbers? I mean, if you look at the current figure, only less than 10% of these people were passed. This is worrying, isn't it?
Well, I think in the first place, I mean, clearly when examination is set, there will also be what they call market scheme and that kind of thing. I am not the position. I'm not a member of the Joint Legal Council. My colleague who is a member of the Joint Legal Council. I do not think that even my colleague who is a member of the Joint Legal Council is even aware of the market scheme that was used. So we cannot be easily judgmental and say that merely because it's 10% of students who pass, then clearly it shows a deliberate attempt on the part of the regulators of the law program to reduce or restrict access to law courts. So first and foremost, we must establish whether indeed all those who failed actually failed in truth, or all those who passed also passed in truth. I think it calls for, as I said, a proper examination of the issue. And that proper examination will, in my view, be done not really by picketing or demonstrating, in all humility. But indeed, clearly this is global. This has never happened. I understand. That's why I'm saying that indeed we ought to take a critical look at it now. Now that law students are resorting to what I may term unusual or extraordinary measures, then it means that the problem is quite immense and must be addressed. Indeed, we will take these steps.
So this is purely a case of students not meeting the standards?
Precisely, simple. And I think that fact ought to be recognized first. So the problem must be examined. So it's not a case where you could say that the law school had only 120 places for law students this year. It is not true at all. It was not a question of the law school placing a cap or placing a limitation of 128.
So this isn't the case of no space?
Definitely not. This year, definitely not.
You had 1,000 spaces.
Yes.
Students were simply not good enough.
It's a case
to take up the 1,000 spaces.
Precisely. It was a case of only 10% pass.
Hold on, let me go. Hold on.
All right, you're welcome back. And let's start from what didn't go on well with the demonstration and what may have gone really bad with the demonstration. I've heard people roundly condemn, the attempts to vandalize the Deputy Attorney General's vehicle when he was moving in there, attempts to, hit the vehicle, and people asking, that's unbecoming of people who want to become lawyers, because the requirements you need to enter the law school starts with the same qualification for a judge, and it is high moral character and integrity, and that may not qualify them. But Kweku, the question is now being asked. The police has suggested that the demonstration was illegal. They issued a press statement to say that demonstration was illegal. From what you have seen, the NPP as a party has issued a statement to condemn it, how they were handled. I think the National Youth Authority also issued a statement to condemn the brutalities meted out to some of them. All of that. We have seen people who were hurt in the process, and they arrested some people in one of those, people who say, farcical attempts, and later released them.
See, the demonstrators, the organizers, I'm sure they went through the procedures laid out by the Public Order Act.
Yes.
If you do so, and in the course of the demonstration, you do something contrary to the contents of that law, there are prescriptions to cure the mischief. The police definitely should know that. The law, there's a due process. Even before the demonstration, if the police attempted to persuade them not to hold it, but to defer, and they said no, the police had to go to the courts to get a court order. Yeah, we're talking here due process, rule of law. What the little I saw on TV, the brutality is inexcusable. because assuming without admitting
Yeah.
that they were doing some things that bordered on vandalism.
Exactly.
I'm still not too sure that the police reaction was appropriate. It was an overkill. Okay. And you see, an institution like the police, they are expected to be more professional in handling these things. Maybe we must go back to see how we are training our police to control crowd.
The actual report.
Yes, we should go back and check on all those things, whether we are actually doing the right things or not. So to be honest with you, I'm not prepared to rationalize the police behavior. I think they misbehaved.
Okay.
I've been asking myself, what has the IGP done so far relative to that? See, recently, we were all worried about attacks on police, personnel, and all the rest. And because that is also very dangerous. It takes away the authority, the respect, and everything from them. But they have no business visiting violence on citizens who are demonstrating. We need to hear something from the police authorities relative to those who were in charge of that demonstration. I mean, those who were out there to protect the demonstrators who ended up behaving as if they were just foot soldiers.
Okay, Martin, what do you know about what's happened? Because they issued a statement, the Law Students Association issued a statement in which they also commended you, Kofi Bentil, and Nana Oyeleta for coming to their rescue and assisting them in the whole process. We understand that they issued the notice required by law, which is supposed to be giving 5 days notice.
Yes.
They gave like 10 days notice and all of that.
Yes.
When they got to the Jubilee House, what happened that they were being prevented?
Okay, so what it is that it would appear that the police are not happy that when they suggested that the demonstration be postponed, the students didn't agree. You see, so you know how sometimes in recent times, it's not even in recent times, it's always been the attitude of our police that some of these demonstrations, as soon as they think in their estimation that it will cause some perceived public inconvenience, then the first sentence is to say, postpone it, hoping that if they ask you to postpone a number of times, you give up, you say. But these students were resilient. They insisted that no, we would not. So that is the underlying current, you say. So on that day, from the law school through to the new court complex, to the AG side, and then to the Jubilee House, you see that on their way, that was at the Sankara that this whole thing happened. So from...
But quick one, was that part of the approved routes, or that was not part?
That specific, I don't recollect. What I do know is that there is because of that underlying thing that don't do it today at all on Monday 7th.
No business. They should have gone to court.
Exactly. You see it. You say it. So having gone through to this extent, then the commander came up. You see it. So he didn't want the whole thing to take place. That's it, basic, flat out. So to the extent that the students came out, he felt slighted. So you see that already there was, if you call it like honorables were tipping point. The fact that you could defy us, we say postpone, you say no under the law. Because the students made it clear to them that, look, under the law, we don't need your permission, but rather we are informing you.
Right.
So you see the whole thing.
So when the police said postpone, they didn't agree.
Yes.
And they wrote a letter to the police telling them that we cannot postpone anyway.
Yes.
So the expectation was that the police would go to court and stop them.
Yes.
The police didn't do that.
They didn't do so.
So on the day of the demonstration, they converged at the law school.
Yes.
And then they began their procession.
Yes.
They say that the procession was very peaceful until they got to the Akwaje interchange, where police showed up, armed to the teeth, they suggest.
Yes.
And that's when things began to go wrong.
Yes, and that's so wrong. So wrong, because you see, this is not the first time. I have here, you know, the Accra Sports Stadium Disaster Committee report, okay, where the committee came out with the findings that no, the way we train our police to use these weapons is not appropriate when it comes to crowd control. We do a poor job.
No, but what do you do? They say don't do it. They don't go to court to stop you. And then you start peacefully, you get to one point.
Yeah.
So they meet them at that place, and then they tell them that we will not allow you to go to the Jubilee House.
Yes.
And that's where the problem began.
Yeah, and then Abu Jinapo even came there and told them that no.
Deputy Chief of Staff.
Yes. He said no, allow them to come to the ceremonial gate of the Jubilee House and then he would receive it. And the police still said no. You see, they just had an agenda that, look, so that's from the way the students are describing, is the whole fact that they came out when the police thought that, no, the thing should be postponed. That's just the basis for it. Because when the Deputy Chief of Staff himself has come upon the situation, he says, allow them to come to the ceremonial gate.
The allegation is that whilst they were in the process to negotiate that only a few of them be allowed at least to proceed to the Jubilee House, the Greater Accra commander, DCOP Frederick Edu Enim, fired on his orders, fired rubber bullets at the students, sprayed the students with water from their water cannons, and fired tear gas to disperse the students.
That's disproportionate.
Exactly, that's the word. Thank you. Disproportionate use of force. Disproportionate. To be fair to the police, you know, they have also made allegations that the students were throwing stones. But so far, where is the video evidence of it? You think if there was evidence of throwing stones, this wouldn't have been captured quickly? At least the evidence of the brutality is on tape. Where is the evidence of the stones? So far,
so what help did you provide them? 13 of the leaders were arrested. 13 of them were arrested. They say the arrest was in a violent manner. We saw some of them being pushed into the armored vehicles. And that reminds me of an experience I had myself where I was being forced to enter an armored car. I said I won't. And then they slapped me.
You remember the Mobra struggle, 98, when we went to the castle. Yes.
What help did you give them?
So basically, whilst they were there and then the situation was getting bad, that was when they called me. They called me that I should be on standby, and that if I didn't hear after a certain point, then I should proceed there. But in the interim, then they also placed calls to Mr. Kofi Bentil and then Nanoye. Yes, so in the process, Mr. Bentil and Nanoye got there earlier and then got the bail eventually sorted. Yes, so I was on standby.
All right.
I was on standby.
So as it is, they were not charged, really?
Yes, but I hear that the police want to still prosecute. I mean, they want to charge them, which we think, no, listen, these things, they've made some mistakes. They should just eat humble pie and let this matter die. Otherwise, from what it is, the students who are discussing looking at going to Shraj to lodge a complaint, because for them, they have video evidence of brutality.
So what do you say? Kweku was saying the IGP should be doing something about this. What should be done?
Yes, so that's what I was saying. Look, from 1970, from the Ryan committee report to Justice Archer report to the stadium disaster. I mean, so many police reports. This thing about training on especially crowd control. It's older than you and I.
Yeah.
Older than you and I. Until date, we have this problem.
Including recruitment.
Yes, exactly.
No, what should be done? Should the IGP, and again, we have an IGP who has a short history. He investigates all sorts of issues. Yeah, when things happen, he calls for investigations into them. Should he be investigating this matter to see what he can do?
Looking at it, you see that because we are not, as an institution, it should be done. But you see that the structure of PIPS itself, you know, because we've asked for, and you've been leading the crusade for an independent police commission, right? Police complaints commissions where we can do these things. To the extent that it's not altogether independent, I'm in two minds. In one, I think, Shraj should do it. In another, I'm thinking that, maybe the police can do it. But if we can get coverage, that will be telecast so that there's some transparency, it can help
very
the process.
briefly, Kwenka, and I think we should move away from this and look briefly at the issue about what they were really fighting for. You, as Deputy Attorney General, you are clearly aware of the encounter with your boss, with your colleague, Godfrey Dame. We have seen some of the videos. In fact, some had actually alleged that you were the one.
Yes.
Samson, thanks so much for this opportunity once again. First, let me state that whatever happened was most unfortunate, and all of us should join hands in condemning the high-handedness with which it was handled at that particular stage. But let me state this, and let me state it quite clearly. I was actually up north, and I had stated, even when I granted an interview to one of the radio stations, that I had gone in preparation for my late father's funeral. And I was not in Accra. Then I got a call that there was a program on one of your radio stations here in Accra in which it was alleged that I had called police to brutalize students who were demonstrating. I was not even in Accra. And I was just telling you off air that even a particular commentator, a political commentator, took me to the cleaners. When in fact, I was not even in Accra. So I called in and said, as I was speaking with the journalist, I said I was far away at Bolgatanga. I was not even in Accra at the time. So how could I have been in Accra, and how could you have surrounded my car and I ordered police to come and beat you? So I issued that. And then that particular radio station unconditionally apologized to me and retracted.
So they wanted Godfrey Dame to address them.
No,
Godfrey Dame did address them, but what happened to him?
I'm getting there. You see, Godfrey committed no offense, and Godfrey never called police to come and brutalize anyone. Let's get that right. Dame did not call police to come and brutalize anybody. In fact, he acted so professionally. First, when he came, they marooned him. They did not even allow him to alight from his car to have the opportunity to address them. And they were banging his car and chanting songs and all that. He attempted to come out. He could not. So he used another route and came back to them. And then trying to alight to address them, they wouldn't even allow him. That was why he addressed them while in his vehicle.
He actually said somebody advised him to remain in there because it wasn't in
He wanted to come out. He actually wanted to come out.
One of the demonstrators advised him to stay in there, otherwise.
Yes. Yeah. So he heeded to that advice and decided to address them while seated in there. And they were still banging on the car and chanting songs and all that. And he had all the patience to address them. So he listened to them, and he was of the thinking that they had a petition.
Right.
So he could receive it for and on behalf of the Attorney General.
Right.
There was nothing of the sort. He addressed them, and you heard him. Very professionally, he addressed them. And after he left, the next moment, people started saying that he called the police to come and brutalize them. And they had no evidence whatsoever.
Okay.
Just to cast a slur on his integrity.
Okay.
So that was most unfortunate. I think that the leadership of the demonstrators ought to apologize.
But what is the government as qua the Jubilee House going to do, seeing that a deputy chief of staff, Abu Jinapo, was clear? He was also going to the Jubilee House and he saw what was going on. He stopped and told the police to give them access to the Jubilee House. The police didn't listen to him. So at least he's a witness of what has happened. And the Jubilee House's name is what may have gone in the mud. So what will be done in that direction?
I think that is why I stated that the action of the police was high-handedness. Even if they wanted to use a little bit of force at that particular stage, what was the purpose? Is it that the students were engaged in some destruction or some attacks that they wanted to stop it? I didn't see that on the video, where maybe they engaged in acts that were likely to endanger security at that moment. Then the police will say that they have to apply some minimum force, which has no meaning anyway, and to be able to disperse them. No, so they have not been able to establish that there was a provocation or there was a certain attempt to destabilize or to create insecurity. So their action was justified to the extent that it was meant to kill a certain conduct on the part of the demonstrators.
Let's hear just one statement. Statement. You see, let's just oppose this. Don't forget that at the time, you see the situation Honorable narrated when they banged on this Godfrey Dame's car. You know he has security, yet he prevailed upon them not to do anything. Okay, yes, and they moved from the AG side and went to Akwaje. So what's different? If Dame could control his security not to cause any violence, why couldn't the regional commander control his men?
Well, they had instructed that they shouldn't do the demonstration in the first place. Now, let's move away from the demonstration and the issues that came out. You have been known to be one of the advocates for what the students are calling for. Are they beating a dead horse? Let's go straight to the solutions. And is it really the case that the General Legal Council is not reforming? As we know now, they had tried to get an expansion. They were ready to admit as many as over 1,000, students who would have passed the exam. They didn't conduct the exam. An independent body conducted the exam. They marked them, and they didn't make the marks. Why are we blaming them? We are told this year, 306 were called to the bar. Now, contrary to past events, what we have seen in the past, where those proceeding to the second year to be called to the bar, there have been a pass mark rate of about 12% for a period. Like last year, the pass mark was 12%. This year, the pass mark is 64%. Is it true that they are not reforming?
Well, thank you, Samson. I listened when the Deputy Attorney General was speaking, and I think that we appear to be drawing closer. He said, look, the reforms must be holistic, must be comprehensive. I heard it clearly, and I relaxed in my seat. I mean, it means that government is now listening. And
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. and I also heard Kojo Opon Nkrumah say, look, the reforms must be radical, comprehensive. And so it means there's some movement. And it's a general acceptance of the fact that the situation in which we are is unacceptable. Now, again, the issue goes beyond providing space.
It's unacceptable that
800 and
1,700 failed.
No.
1,700 failed.
About 1,700
failed. Yes.
Yes. It's not acceptable.
Whose fault is it that they failed?
We don't know.
It's not the students.
We don't know. That's why we need reforms. In any civilized society, when examiners set questions and students fail, what do they produce? They produce an examiner's report so that the students will understand why they failed. Has the General Legal Counsel...
Even for entrance exams?
Even for entrance exams. There must be an examiner's report. So why haven't they produced an examiner's report? So that we know what the students are not doing right. And
those who were just called to the bar, there was one of them that Joynews interviewed.
Yes.
He said he should have been called last year, but he wasn't called because he was said to have failed. When he went for remarking, he actually didn't fail. Yet his call to the bar has been delayed by 1 year.
Yeah.
Can you believe this?
I can tell you that the students have told me that some 2 years ago, they had custody of the results. And Samson, some students didn't have results recorded against their names. It was very embarrassing. And so we're not saying that law school, General Legal Counsel has no jurisdiction to supervise admissions into the law school. All we are saying is that everything that is being done at the law schools must be transparent as to win the trust and confidence of the students.
Okay, in a minute, if you can conclude on this, they are now telling you that you were in Parliament and you were the ones when the new law was being brought upon Prosecution's judgment you obtained from the Supreme Court, that interviews must be eliminated from the entrance process. There should only be an entrance exam.
Yes.
They are telling you that if you had allowed the interviews this time round, a lot more people would have gone in, because when you get the 50% pass mark and they are inviting you to interviews, they would invite those who had, say, 49, 48, and they will come and they would have
Tony Forson put that to me, and I told him that was quite unfair, because you were in Parliament as well. What were we doing in Parliament? I argued on even retroactivity of the legislation. What were we doing in Parliament? The Supreme Court had ruled that the institution of examinations and interviews was unconstitutional, as it was not supported by any rule. The Ghana Bar Association, Ghana Law School was in the process of admitting students. And we're going to use the same procedure which had been declared unconstitutional. So they needed an ex facto rationalization of an otherwise illegal process. They came to us with an ally, wanting us to give them the authority to conduct exams and also interviews. Ex facto rationalization. Then we said, look, conducting exams and doing interview constitute 2 entry barriers. And there is evidence that some people pass the exam but fail the interview. So why will you put 2 entry barriers before the students? So, well, we want you to go and conduct admissions into the law school. And the Deputy Attorney General, who is a member of the General Legal Council, was there throughout. Go and conduct the exam, because we were now approaching a situation where they could not conduct, they could not have admissions for that year. So go use examinations to get students, but bring comprehensive legislation to deal with the situation. That was the conclusion.
Okay, so you are waiting for a comprehensive legislation.
That
and
was
there is one in the offing, right?
Well, we hope that there's one in the offing.
Okay, thank
you.
Now,
but let me say, just for the police matter, I will always say that police don't move. It's a service, it's an institution, it's security. They don't move. It is important for all of us to know who authorized the movement of the police to where they...
Okay. Now, Martin, in 2 minutes, and Penka will conclude for us. In 2 minutes, do you think it is fair to accuse the General Legal Council of acting in, in the past and not, being forward-looking, being progressive, and actually being deliberate and restrictive in allowing, those who deserve to go to the law school to go to law school?
Suddenly, the answer is I'm not in a position to come one way or the other because of lack of information. I don't have all the information. You know why? It was just this morning I discovered that, yes, there was a committee chaired by Justice Doche and then one also chaired by Justice Eni Yebua on the matter of arranging for space ahead of time. You see? So I was like, oh, if that is true, then they should have come out very early. They should have had a PR system, because if we had real evidence that they anticipated that there would be a rise in the numbers and they had made preparation, then that shows that, you see, that it would take a lot of force out of the conspiracy theory.
What will that change if the students still failed?
No, so that then we would, then the next point, so where I now want to follow them is on the matter of the undertaking that you
can challenge.
Yes, that one is a no. That is no law. Look, I think the General Legal Council should just scrap that policy.
That you should write an entrance exam and have the opportunity to challenge the results.
Exactly. So please, I think administratively they should recall that policy, because the students are going to go to court. It will be very embarrassing. The General Legal Council should do well on that. At least, as I said, since I heard the information, and Honorable started, I think 2 weeks ago, we were on a platform, TV3, and where he mentioned it. I thought Honorable was just making up a story. But subsequently, I heard it is true. And I was like, what? So why did you sit? It means that they need a very strong PR system. So I mean, since hearing that information, I've seen that perhaps there's a lot more that I haven't heard. But despite the fact that there may be a lot more that I haven't heard, and so I'm not well informed, the fact remains that as for the undertaking that the results cannot be challenged.
In the immediate term, do you belong to the school that says previous years they have had to lower the pass mark to be able to bring in more? So this time round, they can look at the results again, lower the pass mark and get more in, because after all, they had made provision to take as many as 8,000 or more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know why, Sam? You and I, when we entered law school, did we take an entrance exams? When we were going to Makola?
There were quotas at the time, and your school will determine at your LLB. At your LLB, you would know that you had qualified or you haven't qualified.
Yes.
Because if you didn't have maybe a first class or an upper, or maybe you would know.
It's a good phrase.
Yeah, you would have known that you can't go to law school.
Yes. Oh, Sam, I think that it's a bit difficult.
You can't operate that system now because there are how many law schools?
12.
12 of them.
Yes. Yes, but that notwithstanding, so the point is that, your main point is that since in the past, they came down to 40-something. I think in the circumstances of this case, yes. You don't forget that the students have to put in effort to prepare.
All right, sorry, but we have run out of time.
I believe standards.
Sorry. Immediate measures. Are you thinking of any such as the General Legal Council?
Something
in 2 minutes.
Very quickly. First of all, the police brutality that we just discussed. I have been advised just a moment ago that the students blocked the road for a number 2 hours or so, and then all effort to get them to clear failed. That was what led to that. I've just been advised by a very, very senior
The police
source.
in their press statement says that the demonstration was illegal.
No, this is what I have been advised. I just want to clarify that.
Okay.
But the substance, you realize that my brother Martin has made very strong points, and he referred to something I said. To be candid with you, the Prof. Doche committee and that of Prof. Justice Niyebua's committee, they were very clear. They reported to the General Legal Counsel that they had secured accommodation at UPSA. And then
we are familiar with that. Now, going forward, that's what's going to happen.
I don't know whether you are privy to the fact that we had approved that a prefabricated classroom structure be put up at the law school as an emergency measure for this year's admissions. We had approved that. And procedures were being gone through for them to get a contractor to go to site to within 2 months hand over.
So you were disappointed at the result?
Obviously.
What should happen?
That is why
there's a huge backlog. What should happen?
Samson, I want all of us. You see, some people are creating the impression that now it is meant for a certain class or category of people. That cannot be correct. I know even members of the General Legal Counsel whose children have written and failed this exam 3 times.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It only tells you the level of fairness. Nobody can influence anything as far as that is concerned.
Okay.
The mass failures. Back to that. I was telling you off air that I know a young man from Bolga who has nobody in position of authority or whatsoever. I mean, from a very humble background. He's among the 128 that passed.
Great.
Okay? And he's currently preparing to get in there. So what I'm seeking to say is that the process is fair. There's something that my very good brother has stated, which I think we have to look at. Putting out the marking scheme, and then perhaps why people didn't meet it and all that. They will put speculations to rest. But it isn't that somebody has just decided that 128 people should pass. Because otherwise, why were we preparing for bigger numbers?
So people say, and that should be your last reaction here. People say that if you have a Chief Justice who chairs the General Legal Counsel, make a pronouncement publicly in the nature of policy to say that for as long as she has something to do with this issue, what you guys are asking for, forget it.
No, but you see,
it shows that there's some deliberateness.
No, there's no deliberateness at all. You know, I told you that General Legal Counsel, she is the chairperson. But our decisions are by majority vote. So someone should not think that when Chief Justice comes to our meeting, she says, this is it, and we get up and go home.
All right.
No, we are not conveyor belts.
Okay, thank you very much.
Then maybe she shouldn't have made that
statement. I mean, she's continuously reinforcing that
people have actually quoted her verbatim a number of times and said she should not have made it. That statement means that we have the ability to influence the outcome of the examination results or all that. But I'm saying that we do not have the ability to influence it.
All right.
The Independent Examination Committee conduct their exams independently.
Thank you all very much. And please, for those of you who are saying people with political connections are those who pass, please don't try that. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Thank you. We'll be right back to deal with the questioning of the bank collapse and the commencement of criminal prosecutions, the case of Capital Bank. Thank you. Right. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And I'd like to introduce a guest who comes in to replace our previous guest on this matter. He comes in to replace Yunusa Hussaini, and that is Isaac Adongo. He's MP for Bolgatanga Central. Thanks for coming, sir.
Yeah, thanks.
Right. Okay. So once you mention matters of banking and finance and economics, then his name pops up. Right. So we now have to deal with the issue of the bank collapse. And as you know, and from the indications that were given 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it is now that the prosecutions appear to have commenced. And as we are aware, this is just the first of them, and that a number of them will come as well. There were 2 banks first, and there were 5 banks in the second round of the bank collapse. Will that also extend to the microfinance situation where there were hundreds that also collapsed? Well, so let's begin on that. And the AG this week has filed charges in the High Court against the founder of the Capital Bank, Ato Asian, and 3 others. Questions are coming up as why these are the only who have been charged, number 1, and whether these charges are really maintainable charges, stealing, money laundering charges. Will they stand the test of the law? There are lawyers who have written to say, sort to poo-poo what is going on, and there are those who are raising questions about the number of people who are being put in court, because there's the civil action angle, and in the civil action, as many as how many people, over a dozen people, are standing trial for, among others, for defrauding, for fraud, committing fraud. Why are they not part of this list? We'll try and unravel or understand that. So maybe we should start with the lawyers. Okay. And I know somebody who is in a very difficult situation this morning. Very, very difficult situation this morning. I don't know how he will go around this. But okay, so let me ask this. Start with you, Penka, first. So this is the Attorney General's department. It does appear you are now succumbing to pressure because the public has been asking, where are the prosecutions you talked about? And you're almost running out of your tenure, a 4-year tenure. So is this sort of tokenism, or what's going on?
Thanks, Samson. Obviously not tokenism at all. Obviously not tokenism. And let me also put this in perspective as we set out. I want you to cross-check from 92 whether there has been any period in history when 21 officials have been put before trial. Check it. Whether there has been any period under any Attorney General that we had 21 people in 4 different cases in court, high-profile cases in court at the same time.
Yeah, the National Service case, there are way more than 21.
Yes, hold it. Yeah. Hold it. You know, I'm talking in respect of political appointees.
Okay.
All right? Just check that in history. If you have it, you can let me know. Because in the cases that we are in court with, and I'm not talking about whether the persons are guilty or not, that's not the argument. That will be for the court to determine. But I'm talking about, if you look at the NCA, you look at SNET, you look at Opuni and Agongo, and then you look at venture capital, and you look at Maslock. The number of persons involved. Let's check whether since 92 we've ever had any such numbers. And my checks reveal that we've never in our history had any such numbers. So it is not true that there is tokenism on our part.
Honorable, you know, I just take that one now because Kwame Nkrumah signed
the Fourth Republic.
After Kwame Nkrumah's overthrow, the Agate Commission, they were way more than 20.
In the Fourth Republic. Now, so Samson, time has come for us to review other documents and to go to court. And let me say this.
There were even people within your party who were accusing the Attorney General of not doing anything, and that's, you had talked about prosecution, and you are not doing anything.
You see, sometimes, Samson, you push such people to mention those cases, and then they will give you media reportage of alleged corruption, which is no evidence for prosecution. That's totally different. You see, you can only say that we haven't prosecuted if you have evidence that there is conclusive investigation on the part of CID, IOCO, or any other state entity. The docket is before the Attorney General, and it has not been prosecuted.
Capital Bank and UT Bank came down how many years ago? Why is it taking this long?
When did the dockets of these banks come to the Attorney General? That's what you should be asking yourself. When, not when they came down. And the extensive documentation involved, Samson, the investigators had to do a lot more. And even when they came with it and we reviewed it, we realized that there were still a lot of gaps. So prosecution, otherwise maybe you are urging us to persecute people. But if we have to prosecute, we have to follow due process. You know that it is not in debate that the decision to prosecute lies in the bosom of the Attorney General by Article 88, strictly speaking. But you see, you exercise that discretion in compliance with Article 296, the exercise of discretionary power. You don't have to look at a person and by the fact that you resent that person or you do not like that person's nose or face, then you start taking the person to court. That's not it. You're supposed to go through processes. And you know that when you go to court, Samson, the very day you arrive, the judge has a discretion to discharge the accused person. If, for example, the facts do not support the charges that you have leveled against the person, he can at that stage alone discharge. You can apply for
the defense lawyers, that's what we'll look at first.
Absolutely.
And embarrass
you. So the Attorney General, we don't have to run to court because we want to satisfy people's anger. We have to go to court only when we are ready to prosecute. Otherwise, we'll be engaged in persecutions. And we should not be doing that. You see, we don't want to wake up tomorrow morning and people begin to score us marks. How many cases we've lost in court. We don't want that. We want to exercise our discretion professionally. And I have said this time and again that people do not probably know who they are dealing with. They are talking about the Honorable Gloria Kufu. People don't know who they are dealing with when you're talking about her. Very firm, fair, and strong. I have worked under her for 2.5 years. And I can tell you that you cannot manipulate her in any way. If she's convicted that this is what is right, she will do it. You see, so they may be talking about delays. You see, justice delayed, they may say justice is denied. But justice rushes, justice buried.
Okay, so we have at least, we have officers from one bank. We have 6 banks left.
Will that be, I'm just talking about
when will that come
still
out?
Limiting myself to this bank that we've taken to court.
But we need the general information. When can we expect?
I can assure you and assure your viewers, and I have the authority of my boss to say that at least two others are ready and will be rolled out very soon.
Commendable.
2 other banks are ready and will be rolled out. We're just fine-tuning. And when we I'm unable to disclose which ones they are for obvious reasons. But 2 others are ready. And very soon, when we put the finishing touches, they will follow Capital Bank. It is only Capital Bank that is going to court. And it may not necessarily be the case that all the banks that have gone down will go to court. Because some of them may have been as a result of civil wrongs. If you cannot establish crime, even though the bank has collapsed due to the conduct of certain persons, but those conducts are not criminal. There are civil wrongs that led to that. Maybe you did not act in good faith and all that, but we haven't established crime. Such matters may not necessarily go to court. There may be civil remedies to those particular ones. But those that we have established crime, we will be able to take them to court. And again, it brings me to this particular issue before us.
And how soon?
And the commentaries that are being run, Samson, I have heard people, you see, when matters come before court, we don't discuss the merits. We just look at them as they are and allow the prosecution to make its case. The defense will mount a defense, and it is for the judges to determine the guilt or otherwise of the persons. So I'm not able to tell you that in Capital Bank we have an ironclad case. The people are going to be convicted. No, that's not why I'm here. We are going to, as a state, present our case.
How soon are we going to have these 2 other dockets ready, to put in court?
You see, as I've said, we are looking for some little bit of information to polish up our charges. That's why I don't want to give you a definite date.
But
it will not be long at all.
All these people have been attending to investigations at Yoko and a special committee.
Yes, please.
Since the bank collapse.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Because as you investigate,
and they have been on
new
bail.
Issues come up. They are on bail.
Okay.
New issues come up.
Okay.
Sometimes you are investigating a matter, a certain disclosure is made. You have to rope in other people. Again, and even when they bring the file to us, sometimes you have to review it, and after you've reviewed it, you have to then say that go back.
Okay.
And then check these areas.
In this matter, why only 4? When people are asking, when in the civil case, where they are being, as their directors and shareholders are said to have done some wrong. You have as many as 16 of them. You are retrieving money from each one of these 16. Money you said they got by fraud. Why has that not found expression in the criminal matter? In the civil matter, you have William Atuesian, you have Mensah Otabel, Oheniba Kosayakoto, Stephen Enchel, Kingsley Atagansa, Otabel and Associate, International Central Gospel Church, Kwejo Eyisi Ehring, Isaac Osa Thompson, John Kofi Mensah, Edwin Obeng Donko, Fitzgerald Odonko, who is in this one, Amada Montia, Kofi Kwakwa, Francis Edu Mante, and Isaac Osa Thompson Mensah.
Something, in my view, you are one of the highly respected lawyers, in my view. And I am entitled to it.
I'm not doing lawyer. I'm hosting and moderating a program.
No. In my view, and I'm entitled to it. And my very good brother and friend, interestingly, Uncle Kweku, the three of us were in a Kwafu hall. At the same time, we were very good friends.
Okay, go ahead.
You see, there's a distinction between civil and criminal cases. And I want us to put that distinction very clear. The proof in civil matters is just on the balance of probabilities. Which of the two the judge should believe at the end of the case. But in criminal matters, the proof is beyond reasonable doubt, which we all know. So again, it is our discretion exercise based on the set of facts that are available to us as an Attorney General. So you may have your sentiments, you may be so angry about somebody's conduct and all that. But if by the evidence available to us, that conduct does not amount to a crime that can be prosecuted in court, you will find the person not being prosecuted, even though there will be a civil case mounted against the person.
All right.
So that is the basic reason.
Good.
Otherwise, you may just lump all of them together, you go with criminal processes, and then you'll be disgraced in court. Yeah. I know some lawyers, when you appear in court in criminal matters, they are very critical. Yes. And they will go to the court of the matter, and if you don't take care, you will get embarrassed there. I mean, they will raise certain issues that, they will even ask fundamental questions, whether the conduct you are complaining about is a crime.
Of course, that's what they are paid to do.
Absolutely. So you have to pass judgment carefully. And you have to come to the conclusion that, look, this conduct, by the facts, left unchallenged, an offense has been committed. And that is exactly what we do. You know that we draw prima facie evidence that, look, by the evidence available to us, we are very convinced that if it is not challenged, it can secure conviction. And then when you make up that mind, then you know the appropriate charges. And remember that a conduct may be so reprehensible, but if it is not founded on an offense defined by law, you cannot charge a person with anything.
Okay. So as far as the Capital Bank is concerned, it is William Atuesian, the founder, Tetenete, Fitzgerald Odonko, and Kate Kote Papafio, who will stand trial.
That is the determination we have made.
Okay. And this begins, is it Monday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. All right. So I have questions for him that I know I'm not allowed to ask.
Okay.
I'll try. But you, come on. So from what you have seen, Martin, and I want you guys to deal with it in that level, and then I come to the guys here who will do the economics of it.
Hey, but Uncle Kweku is more than a lawyer.
I'm at sea here. Stranded.
Okay. We'll take him to write the entrance exams. Okay, so what do you say from the charges you see? Primarily theft and money laundering.
Yes.
And conspiracy to steal and to launder.
Yes. What do I say about the charges? You see, once again, today has been the same answer. You know what they did? They put out the charges, but left out the facts portion.
Right.
You see it. And so for us as lawyers, when you see the charge sheet, you should see what we call the accompanying facts. So because they didn't add that, once again, we are groping in the dark. So I'll limit myself to say what I had said earlier in the week, that it's very exciting.
But we are fairly familiar with some
yeah,
aspect of
yes,
the facts.
the boldest report and
Right.
that. Yeah, so of course, let's repeat again before I
Not
go
even
on.
boldest, but the Bank of Ghana's own statements
Okay.
when it was collapsing these banks.
Yes, the liquidity support and that. So once again, before I continue, let's repeat. A man is innocent until what? Proven guilty. And it's very obvious to everyone here that we don't have all the facts. We don't have all the information, but we are compelled to comment based on bits and pieces. So this analysis may be very faulty. Okay? Yes, so this apart, I must say that for me, I see that we have really done well, extremely, by coming for the trial. That is to say, by taking a decision to actually bring the trial to fruition. Sam, it's in the context of the fact that, you know, when this matter happened, people called for these criminal prosecutions day and night, but it never happened. And it took so long. So much so that this matter, even if I said it's gone to the back burner, it's not accurate. It had totally fallen off. It wasn't a hot issue for debate in the public space. And all of a sudden, the government came to say, oh, the trial is on. So for me, it brought me so much
The president gave the indication at the bar conference.
Exactly.
Right.
So, and if you check, look at the matters that were being discussed months before the president gave the hint. This matter wasn't a hot kick, you see. So the fact that all this while that we're complaining, the government was working steadily behind the scenes to try to bring the trial to fruition, is commendable. We should commend, because what would then happen is that, you see, as we've stated, we don't know whether they will be guilty or they'll be acquitted. So we will not talk about that. But we should be very happy for the fact that the trial is going to take place. And every day that there's a court trial, Joy FM will carry it, other media will carry it. So through that, we will be sensitized, we will be educated. It will serve as a warning, as a signal, you see. So that is where we will reap most benefits. And don't forget the naming and shaming, because for lay people, they will say, oh, there is no smoke without what? Fire, right? They will say, hey, I mean, of all the people in this world, why is it that you are the only ones? You see, that way of reasoning.
From the charges you see, what are the ultimate sanctions if the people are found guilty?
Yeah, so for the charge of stealing, it ranges from a fine up to a maximum of 25 years imprisonment. And then for the money laundering, from a fine of 5,000 penalty units, which is about 60,000 Ghana, up to 10 years imprisonment. So as I've said, for me, the emphasis is not on the imprisonment. Please, let's take it one day at a time. The fact that there's going to be a trial. And also, Sam, since you are closer, maybe I could even yield the rest of my time. What I want to find out is that these officers, the AG's officers who have been investigating, to what extent have you freed them from the other cases? Because we know that the AG is overstretched. AG herself asked for about 350 lawyers a year and a half ago. The finance minister never gave. And that's how come the police are doing most of the prosecutorial work in a middle-income country, which is so strange. And that's why we've been calling for government to phase out these policemen, bring in lawyers. Kenya did this
So you are
few
saying
years
that
ago.
the AG's lawyers who be doing these cases must be freed from all other cases so that they pay attention to this.
Exactly, please. And let's see that one transparency on that.
How about the suggestion for dedicated courts and also for speedy trial, and also to, if possible, allow for a telecast?
I'm for it, 300%. Earlier in the week on the Super Morning Show, was it on Thursday or so? Yes, Daniel Daze took us through that kind of interview. We advocated for it. So AG, you are here. Let's see transparency. We want to be sure that the officers working on this bank collapse issues, that is their main work. And then let's have that transparency. Let's ask for the court to permission from the CJ to telecast the proceedings, because that will help all of us. Because in saying this, as I keep saying, it's not as if we are so morally upright. Even scripture says that our righteousness is like what? Filthy rags, right? So we all want to learn and be cautioned. You see, yes, that's the upshot.
Okay, CJ would, some will say, would allow this, but CJ Akufo.
We should ask.
Will she allow a telecast?
Let's ask. I don't know. And you know, she's in favor of technology. You know, she's one CJ who
people say she's in favor of technology, but what some of the actions she has taken in the court suggests the contrary.
And then she's reversed it. That's the lawyers not using laptops. They've reversed it. And for me, I'm a cocky optimist.
Okay.
Let's make the application. Let's request. And then we'll take it from
We're
there.
relaxing the wigs. People were hoping to do away with the wig, you know, wearing a wig and a gown in this tropical sun.
Yes.
We are back to it. You have to wear it or you are in trouble.
Yes, yes. That's one that's troubling.
All right.
It's not being worn elsewhere.
Elsewhere they are doing away and doing for criminal, you know, trial purposes and so on. Anyway, so, yes, but Martin, just this small bit.
Okay.
What do you also say about the numbers of the accused persons in the criminal matter, in the this thing? Because initially it was in the public, and the Bank of Ghana announced it. The Boldest report and all of those have shown that there's a number of people. And if you see the civil process, all these people have been asked to refund certain amounts of money.
Yes, I know. So the elephant in the room is what? Reverend Mensa Otabil. Yes, I know. I know. That's a very.
In fact, there are MPP people, big wigs, who have gone on radio to say that he is non-prosecutable, and that's why he's not been touched. And that, of course, prosecution is a political decision, and the government will not dare.
Exactly, that's the problem. So here we are left with the conspiracy theories. But I must also indicate that the last I heard, you know, these conspiracy theories, I'd heard the president say he wasn't going to have anything to do with it, so Iyoko should proceed. Okay, so based on that, those rumors, I thought he would be part of the prosecution, the persons to be prosecuted, but it hasn't been. So ultimately, once we've decided that this country is a country governed by the rule of law.
Or is it the case, really, that the Bank of Ghana and all those who were initially postulating that all these people will face, you know, criminal prosecution and all, the finance ministry people saying all of they were all wrong, they didn't know what they were about?
That's difficult to say, Sam, once again, because I'm not privy to all the files. So in matters like this, it means that we are compelled to rely on the good faith of the AG. Maybe now with the Freedom of Information Act coming out, you know what we're going to do? Maybe with time, we would ask to access the files so that we can also read, you know, the information based upon which the AG made the decision to prosecute only a few. With Freedom of Information, we should ask that the AG should give us. Then we can also read and analyze. Then we can come to a definite conclusion.
If that information is not exempt. Okay. So now, I don't know whether I should start with you or go to Kweku. Now, so let's continue from your end. We know that you are one of those who have, you know, who belong to that advocacy, that all of this is something that the government has brought upon itself. Otherwise, how much is it that the taxpayer is having to, you know, use for this again? Is it 13?
Yeah, now it's about 13, but it will rise up to 20.
It will rise up to 20 billion Ghana cedis.
Yeah, Ghana cedis.
Okay, used to hold this situation. And you have belonged to the school that says we could have used less than a quarter of that to restore and, you know, as it were, sanitize the situation and still have the banks functioning. Where we are, what do you say?
Well, let me greet your listeners and to my constituents because I just joined. For me, the action that is being taken is of no relevance to me. It's of no relevance to me because my issue is whether or not we should have collapsed Capital Bank and the rest of the banks. That is my fundamental question. It is not to suggest that individuals, directors, and executives would not have misconducted themselves in relation to their fiduciary role in that campaign. But I'm saying that when a company is wronged, that company is the victim. And to the extent that the victim is now killed, whilst you now go after the people who wronged the victim, it's a travesty of justice.
Hold it there. Let's hear Atuesian. Prior to this, the founder of the bank, prior to this, the charges being preferred, he spoke to Paul Admotri on Good Evening Ghana and actually prayed. He spoke in tongues as well. Let's hear.
Okay,
you call it loans and advances.
Loans and advances are is our capital, because but Universal Bank has more stricter regulation. So once we became a universal bank, what then happened was that the system and the dashboard applicable for a universal bank is totally different from that of what is savings and loans. So then we have to tell, I would hit capital, okay, but is that we're going to have to ring fences. This is legacy issues, non-performing loans. We're going to box it together. Now, shareholders were going to escrow their shares into treasury because we had two challenges. In as much as we grew fast from a microfinance to a savings and loans and to a universal bank, it was the same thing that also sort of gave us a challenge. And the challenge was for us to be able to, as it were, clean up the books and make sure that going forward as a universal bank, we're going to be able to do the things we're supposed to do to achieve the needed success. So we ring-fenced it. Two things that was going to happen. If you're going to look for an investor to come in, the investor was going to come into what we call the good bank and not a bad bank. The good bank is the one that is doing well, is excelling, is doing fantastic. At the time we did this, the good bank was probably the second or the third profitable bank in Ghana.
The good bank on the books of capital.
On the books of capital. So the bad bank is what we ring fence and we call it shareholder loan. It was not money that shareholders took from the bank.
Which is what was reported.
Which was what was reported. And the whole nation was outraged. Obviously, if I was a citizen and I heard that people took that kind of money, I would behave the same.
Let me ask you that in those 2 weeks that you yourself say the whole nation was outraged, and
I never chop a dime, Paul. Paul, what is the point? In our funds, what is it? It is my baby.
That makes sense. It's your bank.
It's my bank. I gave back to the bank.
Well, but they say people set up a bank and rob it.
Yeah, but how can you do that? If people do it, looking at where I have come from, migrated it from an unregulated institution to a regulated space, and now to a universal bank, why will I want to do that? Paul, I was also being insulted. And that was when I got amazed how narrative can be turned and twisted.
Okay, so continue. And the substance of what he had to say simply was that the monies that they have been asked to refund or to pay, and the monies that they are is being suggested they stole, was actually not stolen money, and there was no money laundering. These monies never came to them and their private pockets. It was actually not as in money given to them they took, but it was legacy issues and debt from the commencement of their operations. And they decided as shareholders and directors, so to speak, to share it among themselves in a way to prop up a good bank. And if they made dividends, to pay. Now, they are being tried for theft and money laundering.
You see, the challenge is, like we've all said, we have a difficulty going into the merits of the case. But my question is, if a shareholder is proven to have stolen money from a bank, do we kill the bank? That is my basic question. If directors are proven to have acted fraudulently in relation to a bank, do you kill the bank? If you look at all the grounds for revocation of a license, you don't see that feature anywhere. So this bank is a separate legal entity entrusted in the care of others. We are saying that they did not take good care of that child. Instead of rescuing that child and giving that child to proper custody and care, we'd rather kill the child and start looking for the parent who misconducted himself in relation to the care of the child. It simply doesn't make sense. So we are in court today to recover monies that are owed to this child. But where is the child when we recover the money? Basic question, where will the child be when we recover the money? So my basic principle here is that no matter what occasions the challenges of Capital Bank, it did not form the grounds for the collapse of the bank.
You said, where's the child? I thought that child has been given to a new parent.
No, that child, when you revoke a license, the law is quite clear. You appoint a receiver. You appoint a receiver for an undertaker.
Yes, but somebody took the good assets of the bank.
No, so it's basically like the child is like a goat. You call somebody to supervise the killing of the goat, and somebody says, I want the leg. Okay, somebody says, I want the head. And so CBG comes to take the leg and the heads, and you leave the intestines and the others for a receiver to find people to buy it.
As for Capital and UT, it is Commercial Ghana, GCB Bank.
Yeah, they took the legs and the heads. Okay. And now the receiver has been given the intestines to look for somebody to buy. And after that, the receiver, who is the undertaker, is calling all the people whose obligations have to be met by the dead body to come so the monies that have been collected can be shared to them and they go away. So you cannot say the child lives. The child doesn't live. That child is giving birth, the birth certificate of that child is the license. When you revoke that license and you appoint a receiver, you substitute it with a death certificate. And so that child doesn't exist anymore. And I'm fighting for that child that has been unfairly killed because of the offenses of others. And I have read this. If you read this document cover to cover, the true intent of the Banks and Special Deposit-Taking Institutions Act 2016 at 930 is essentially to give opportunity to any struggling financial institution to be rehabilitated and to be revived. In fact, killing is a reality in this document.
You mean a rarity?
Yes. It is the very last resort. Even when you are revoking the license, okay, the processes that you need to follow are quite spelled out. So, for instance, you are told that even before you attempt to revoke that license, you have a certain number of days, 45 days, to engage these shareholders, write to them, okay, let them propose to you how they intend to resuscitate this company. If you are not satisfied.
We are told they did all of this, but the Bank of Ghana was not convinced.
Yes, if you are not convinced, and you say the bank is even insolvent, the law now gives you options. Put that bank into administration. And administration is a road to recovery per this law. That is why
but I thought others had said that when you put the banks into administration, you are rather, it's a road to death.
It is the way.
Because once the customers begin to hear that it is in administration, it's going to die, so they don't come anymore.
No, but it depends on how you do that. You see, even insolvent companies, this law says, how do you define an insolvent? It says it's not just the assets and liabilities on the face of the balance sheet. But it is a proper valuation based on valuation standard. So you can't even pronounce a company to be insolvent until you have taken steps to value its assets and to compare those assets to its liabilities. All of that is to give the bank the chance to recover a lot of its assets that were undervalued, and for which reason the reporting on the balance sheet doesn't show a true and fair position of the bank.
I see.
So at the end of the day, you are even allowed to go and appoint an advisor who is supposed to support this bank, even when you put it in administration. Administration, I told you, is a road to recovery, because the administrator, in 1 month, is supposed to give us a fair understanding of where we are when he came in.
I see.
After that, he's supposed to produce a report that comes with an action plan on how to restore that bank. And that action plan includes exploring opportunities of new capitalization from existing shareholders, exploring possibilities of new capital from new shareholders, exploring the position of actually mandatory restructuring of debt facilities. The main objective is to give that bank the best opportunity there is to survive. And I'm saying that if Boulders came and said that a bank's license was procured because the figures that they brought for capital were manipulated, granted. Okay? How do you determine that those figures were manipulated?
You take a pause in 2 minutes.
Yeah, don't forget that that bank was already, it's not a greenfield bank. In other words, they didn't set it up from scratch. It wasn't a new bank. It was a financial institution that was already operating, had certain assets and liabilities on its books. And the difference of that constituted a capital that that it brought.
You are saying that regardless of the infractions that were seen through these exercises, the solution ought to have been corrective that does not include a collapse.
Yes. In fact, in this law, they tell you what are the corrective measures you take when a bank is undercapitalized. What are the corrective measures you take when a bank is significantly undercapitalized?
You are pumping money in, and the money you are pumping
the money?
Is not coming
Which
back.
money have you pumped
As we
in?
know, they were paying back, but most of them were paying back the interest on the money that was given to them by the Bank of Ghana.
No, let me tell you. Bank of Ghana doesn't lose a dime. Do you know why? You can't give liquidity to a bank without collateralization. Every single penny of the 610 million was properly collateralized. Even in the old regime. In this new regime, Section 46H says that if it even defines the quality of the collateralization, it tells you that it must be 91-day government securities. That is the level of liquidity that is required. In order to, so my biggest point is that we were told a lot of things, and a certain narrative was pumped out that 610 million was shared among shareholders, and that was the reason we had to close the bank and all of that. My question is, the action that is taken, does it answer the question whether or not legally this bank should have? And I would wish to get the Attorney General's legal opinion on the bank's licenses that were revoked.
So it's
whether
interesting.
it agrees with
and
that.
as you suggest, some of them in the civil processes are seeking, like you have heard ACN say, to take back their banks. That's where you stand. Kuku, I don't know. How do you proceed from the point that he brings up? So why? If the Bank of Ghana feels that I'm in distress and it has given me money, and I use the money in ways that the bank is not happy, it should be entitled to say, I'll collapse you and then I'll prosecute you, not so?
Well, maybe not in all cases. You must do analysis on each case on its own merit. I'm not competent to deal with such issues, let's be honest. And yesterday I was telling your producer to get the people with the requisite expertise and competence to interrogate this. He refused. So here I am. But I've been going through this document, you know, which is it's titled Project Eagle. Investigations into certain suspicious transactions relating to UT Bank and Capital Bank. It was done by PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'll tell you honestly, what I see here, if they are genuinely a genuine reflection of the operations of the two banks, then it's unpardonable.
Share with us.
It's a long story. Look, there are too many of them. For instance, some liquidity support that was given, nearly 500 million cedis. They treated it anyhow. They gave it to themselves as personal loans, shareholders' loans, and all that. It's bizarre.
They explained that. They said they didn't give any money to anybody.
Take your time and read this document.
And that they decided to assume the debt as shareholders.
Look,
No, there was some portion about sharing the money in sacks.
It's all here. See. They didn't even pay back. They didn't intend paying back.
That's what I'm asking him to share the details rather than say he won't share. Get into the details.
No, maybe it's not fair.
Why is it not fair?
Because of the court matter. Because they've reached the stage of the court. If they hadn't reached the stage of the court, I would feel very comfortable giving the details. But because of where they've reached, you are saying that it's Tuesday, you are going to court.
Yes.
So
In fact, we have filed it.
Yes, I feel a bit uncomfortable about that. But what I read here, they were killing their own child. Nobody killed the child. So my brother's analogy, it's complicated. I am unable to admit it.
But you don't help us with the specifics of the basis.
Yes. I don't think it's not right. Just let the court deal with the matter.
Is it a classified document you're holding?
I'm not sure it is. Well, they say confidential information for the sole benefit.
But has it been out in the public?
I don't know.
Boulders, PWC.
Yeah, I've seen those, but this one, I haven't seen it in the public.
That's what they write, but in the end, it's all in the public,
yes.
isn't it?
See, the shareholders through directors of CB took personal loans amounting to 12.6 million Ghana cedis in contravention of Section 74 of Act 930. You are holding it, whether that's true or not. Indebtedness of the shareholders and directors to CB.
You heard Yonicolendi here when the matter began, and he explained that these were not monies they took, but these were the bank's own generational legacy issues. And they decided to make them into loans so they will pay back, you know, in a way managing the bank to survival. So he spoke about the good bank and the bad bank.
Okay.
Well,
I don't know
as I
said,
I like the competence.
If I can say something on that.
Let him finish. Let him finish. Let Kuku finish. Yeah.
What I read here is not in Chinese.
Okay.
Unfortunately. So it hits me, you know. My brother, I don't want to prejudice the matter. I'll give this, if you like, I'll give a copy to you. Next time, if we can, you can read through it. You see, I have very good reasons for what I'm doing.
Something if I can
you want to give it to me?
Yes, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, now.
Okay.
Now, so that I read. You don't want to read. The portion you wanted to read that you are restraining from reading.
You go, let him come.
Yeah, let me just, you see,
who is refusing to give it to you?
Okay, go ahead. So what I wanted to say is that if they are quoting section, what do you call it, Act 930, when did this occur? Because this Act 930 was assented to in September 2016. And under section 160 of that, okay, there are transitional provisions that holds a moratorium up for 6 months. So it really would apply to the banks in terms of compliance from somewhere February, March 2017. We are dealing with matters of 2015 and 2016. So if somebody quotes an offense in a law that took effect from after September 2016, and we are dealing with matters of 2015, I have a big challenge. I have a big challenge. So these are matters that we need to interrogate further.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So whilst you make your intervention, whilst you make your intervention, let me do this. Koku, which page did you want to read? I want to go there. Because these documents have been available long ago. Just tell me the page.
He will do that.
Tell me the page. I'll go there.
Okay, let him do that.
I have it. I have a copy. Tell me the page. I'll go there.
Read it. I wanted to say this.
Because of what he has raised. Then I'll read for you.
Because of what he has raised, which is so fundamental. If you look at our charges, we didn't charge them under this act.
Act 930.
Yes. Honorable Adongo's explanation is justified because of retroactivity. You cannot do that by law. So we didn't charge them under this. If you go and read it carefully, because otherwise we would have just given a blanket check to lawyers to throw us out as soon as we arrived there.
Those actions said killed.
But you see, before the coming into effect of this, there was earlier, laws. Yeah. And then those ones will actually hold any person who acted contrary. But you cannot charge the person under 930. He's right in that direction.
Okay. Yeah. So what do you say to this lawyer who used to work in where you work now, who has written an article and also come public to say that the law that regulates these processes and the banking, all of that, the charges you have brought, that law does not criminalize the things you have called criminal. So what are you up to?
You know, I listened to Eli Klim.
Yes, Agbamava.
And he made that point very clear. Our law is saying that any conduct you engage in, there should be a law that criminalizes it and a punishment prescribed for it. Otherwise, to that extent, it's a nullity. That's what our law says.
Exactly.
So what he's been interrogating is whether the charges we have preferred against the person are backed by law.
He says you are dealing with a banking business. The banking law has not said what you are saying in court now.
No, but you see, that is why I don't want to discuss the merits.
Okay.
The point is that if someone, for example, steals, is in the bank and he steals,
okay,
and then the bank does not criminalize it, you say that the person should walk away with the money because it is not in Act 930. When the Parent Act for Prosecution in Ghana is Act 29 of 1960, if an offense is clearly defined there, it's constitutional.
Okay. Okay. All right. Interesting. So,
yeah, the page now.
No, he has succeeded. He just doesn't want to do it. He just doesn't want to do it. He just doesn't want to. I'm even asking for the specific page he wants to read, so I can read from my own. He refuses to let me have it.
Take this one.
Yeah.
Go to page 17.
Page 17. No, I'm opening this thing more than twice. Page 17.
Yeah.
Page 17. 14.
The heading
15,
here.
16.
We noted several unverifiable CB stroke FCP. You've seen it?
Page 17. Shareholders loan. It's talking about the shareholders loan. And it says fictitious fixed deposit investment claims made on the bank. We noted that some individuals made fixed deposit investments with Capital and More, a company owned by Mr. Atuasian. These investment certificates were signed by Mr. Atuasian. When the investment matured, Mr. Atuasian requested CB represents Capital Bank, to honor them. The value of the investment honored were subsequently debited to the account of Capital and More held at Capital Bank. Reference to Appendix 11 for schedule showing payments made by Capital Bank on behalf of Capital and More. In addition, we noted several unverifiable Capital Bank /FCP investment certificates which were issued by Mr. Atuasian without the knowledge of management of Capital Bank. Discussions with the former general manager of finance of Capital Bank, Mrs. Christie and Samensa, indicated that management only became aware of these investments when they matured and the certificate holders made a claim on Capital Bank. Refer to Appendix 12 for copies of the investment. Yeah?
You didn't finish.
Okay, so at the other
reading them.
At the other side. Okay.
Again.
Okay, so I finished on that page. At the other side, again, there were instances where the bank was unable to recover matured investments from third parties because these funds were blocked by Mr. Atuasian through funds he had access from these institutions. These related to investments made with CDH services and city investments. Refer to section 3.6 for the details. Where unrecovered, the deposits are debited to Capital and More account with Capital Bank. These accumulated and were included in the schedule of barred placements converted into shareholders' loans.
Yeah, they killed the baby themselves.
Okay.
No. That's all. Nobody killed the baby.
Okay, so the summary of your point is that what was this money? Is it the bailout money, or this was the bank's own money?
This is in addition to the bailout money.
Okay.
The 496.
So Samokujeto, senior lawyer, says that these monies were given under strict instructions and conditions.
Yes.
And there were people at the Bank of Ghana who were monitoring and evaluating all these processes.
Exactly.
Where are they?
I've written it here. That was my next point.
Okay, so go ahead.
We should go back.
Go ahead with this in 2 minutes.
And check those who were in charge of BOG.
Okay.
And their conduct relative to all these things. And these things began, there's a report, and I'm sure my brother might have seen it, 2014, 2015. The Bank of Ghana itself.
Okay.
On these whole things that were building up. The question is those who were in charge. What are we doing about them? I've looked at it here.
Excellent.
So if you give him, if you give me a loan, and you gave it to me under conditions, you took collateral, and you did other things, can you turn back and say I've stolen it?
Well, I'm not too sure.
And I'm actually paying. There's evidence that I'm paying it back.
I think there's an element of oversimplification in what you are putting across. Though I'm not very good in these banking areas. My instinct is that you have oversimplified the matter.
But that's what it is.
Yeah. Oh, but in
you don't have to
an accountant.
Yes, oversimplified.
You are in charge of custody of money, you are in charge. But depending on what you use the money for, if you use it outside what is dedicated for a dishonest purpose, stealing comes in.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You have any further comments?
No.
To make? Okay, thank you.
You summarize it for me.
Yes. Okay, so in 30 seconds, what would you like to say?
My issue is this.
Prosecution is good.
All I'm
go
saying
on. We
is
should
that,
see the end
all
of
I'm
this
saying
matters.
is that all this point to people who are alleged to have misconducted themselves. Okay, and these people are separate and distinct from the bank, Capital Bank.
Okay.
Capital Bank itself did not do anything untoward and should not have suffered the consequences for the conduct of
You are saying that we should completely ignore all the reports that said that they did something untoward?
I'm saying that those shareholders and directors would have done something untoward. But you don't kill the bank for the conduct of those directors and shareholders. That's all I'm saying.
Interesting. We're done. I'm sorry, Martin, any 1 second?
Let me wish this my old boy a happy birthday.
An abortion can
Your old boy?
An old boy of St. Charles. Chief of Yona, Abdullah Yakubu and Danny.
Okay, Yona Abdullah Yakubu. Happy birthday to you.
Yes.
Yeah, Kwenka.
Yes.
We're done.
Yeah, I know we're done, but I just wanted Honorable Adongo, my brother, in 5 seconds, to understand that when repeatedly efforts are being made for the child to survive and it fails and it reaches levels where it's at life support and the machine is taken out, then the child goes off.
Thank you. My guests have been Abdul Malik Okubaku, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Martin Pebu is a lawyer and rights advocate. Joseph Dindiok Kwenka is MP for Timpani and Deputy Attorney General. Isaac Adongo is MP for Bolgatanga Central. Have a good afternoon. I'm Samson Ladia. My outfit, as always, is by Latida.